Hey friends, tonight let's explore the quiet lessons hidden in history, the ones not found in textbooks, but in the rhythms of daily life long ago. Let's take it slow tonight. Honestly, you might not make it through even one dawn in ancient times. If you're still awake and still with me, give that like button a gentle tap and subscribe if you'd like to come back for more sleepy wanderings. You wake to the lapping of water against a reed-thatched riverbank, the Nile stretching before you like a ribbon of mercury under dawn's pale light. Your toes curl into the damp mud, pinching the cool earth with every tentative step. Somewhere upstream, a fisherman's call echoes a plaintive note that drifts across the water, mingling with the soft slap of a crocodile's tail as it slips into deeper pools. Yes, crocodiles. It's a solid fact of everyday ancient Egyptian life. You lived alongside toothy reptiles that viewed you as just another breakfast option. A familiar truth drifts through your mind. Ancient Egyptians revered the Nile as both giver and taker of life. Without its seasonal floods, your fields of emmer wheat and flax would shrivel under the unforgiving sun. Yet those same floods create murky waterways where crocodiles bask on hidden banks, their ancient scales glinting like dark armor. You brush a strand of hair from your forehead and feel the early warmth on your skin, ready to bake the morning chill away. You edge closer to the water's edge, reeds parting with gentle rustles. In the shallows, you spot a young crocodile hatchling no larger than your forearm, snapping playfully at insects skimming the surface. It's easy to forget that its parents just out of sight could tip boats and swallow goats whole. You swallow hard-tasting river mud on your tongue and remind yourself that fishermen scout these nests each spring, harvesting eggs for food and disrupting nature's cycle with practiced ease. The ox-drawn barge beneath your feet creaks under morning traffic as workers shuffle aboard, their sandals thumping against the earthen planks. Their skin glistens with sweat already despite the hour, and their chatter is low snatches of gossip about missed quotas and rumored inspections by the governor's agents. You inhale the scent of damp tow rope and waterlogged wood. Bundles of fresh papyrus lean against the railing, destined for scribes who will ink prayers to Happy the Nile god, hoping the floods will be gentle this year. A quirky aside floats into your thoughts. Some devout fishermen tied small clay figurines of Sobek, the crocodile god, to their nets, believing these talismans would grant safe passage among the beasts. Scholars debate whether these clay charms actually warded off crocodiles or simply gave fishermen peace of mind. You might spot one of these figurines bobbing in the current, half-submerged and coated in silt, a tiny guardian for the superstitious. The barge drifts slowly toward the landing, where wooden steps lead up to the town's mud-brick quay. As you disembark, the jolt of dry earth underfoot feels reassuring. You shake the last grains of Nile sand from your sandals and look up at a low wall punctuated by painted murals, vivid blues and ochres, depicting scenes of harvest, divine processions, and that ever-present crocodile slinking across the border between life and death. You place your hand on the cool plaster, marveling at how many feet have followed this same path, leaving smudges of pigment behind like ghostly fingerprints. Your stomach rumbles, reminding you that breakfast awaits. You follow the sound of sizzling oil to a stall where roasted fava beans bubble in a shallow bronze pan. The vendor, a wiry woman with laugh lines etched deep into her sun-bronzed face, offers you a warm handful of beans spiced with cumin and coriander. You bite into one surprised by its tender interior and the earthy warmth that spreads through your chest, a momentary delight before you remember that bread is still to come round flat loaves baked on hot stones until they blister and char at the edges. Crumbs stick to your robes as you tear the bread and dip it in date syrup sticky and sweet. Locals glance at your foreign garb linen, too fine for field workers, and you return their smiles with a nod. You're a guest in a world defined by strict social hierarchies, scribes above artisans, merchants above boatmen, and royalty so distant they might as well be gods. Yet here, at ground level, all distinctions blur over breakfast and shared gossip about tomorrow's market prices. A point scholar's debate drifts into your mind. Did the everyday rituals of eating and bargaining hold more sway over social cohesion than royal proclamations? Some argue that communal meals forged bonds stronger than any pharaoh's decree, while others claim that centralized authority shaped outcomes from temple to tavern. As you swallow the last bean, let the question linger like the steam rising from your cup of barley gruel. You wander toward the sound of tapping mallets craftsmen in a wood shop carving oars for new boats bound for Upper Egypt. The scent of freshly cut cedar mingles with resin from imported pine, evidence of trading networks stretching to the Levant. You crouch to watch a young apprentice plane a plank until it gleams, then nod appreciatively. These skilled hands turn raw wood into elegance, ensuring smooth passage across both calm stretches and treacherous rapids. Above you, the sun climbs higher, painting ripples of light across the river's surface. Children dart down the quay, shrieking as they chase a stray ibis, noisy birds sacred to Thoth, the god of wisdom. They mimic its call, drawing amused glances from passers-by. One ibis swoops low, nearly grazing your shoulder before veering back toward its flock. You inhale the briny hint of river life, the faint tang of algae, the subtle sweetness of marsh plants, and feel a gentle calm settle into your chest. Tonight's gentle question drifts into your mind as the morning bustle hums around you. If survival meant navigating crocodile-infested waters, blistering heat, and rigid social orders, did ancient Egyptians develop resilience through ritual community or sheer stubbornness? Or did the Nile's unpredictable moods demand cooperation above all else? You tuck a stray lock of hair behind your ear, letting the vapor of breakfast stew curl in your nostrils as you ponder. As you step back onto your barge, ready to continue downstream, feel the Nile's pulse beneath your feet, the subtle undulation that has shaped civilizations. Let the memory of crocodile guard talismans' muddy footprints and the hushed debate over meals versus monarchs settle softly in your mind like dusk on water. Suggestion: to maintain clarity and immersion, avoid mixing languages or very casual asides. Honestly, you might not make it within highly descriptive historical narration. Keeping tone consistent helps the reader stay engaged in the scene. You step into the heart of a bustling quarry just beyond the town's mud brick walls, where laborers swarm like ants beneath a blazing sun. The air is thick with the sharp tang of freshly cleaved limestone, and every exhaled breath carries the whisper of dust motes drifting in golden shafts of light. You feel the vibration beneath your feet as massive blocks groan against wooden rollers destined for the pyramid foundations rising on the desert horizon. A well-established fact guides your hands Ancient Egyptian stonemasons mastered the art of splitting limestone using simple tools, copper chisels, wooden wedges, and water. You lean over a narrow fissure in the rock face, your fingertips brushing against the cool, dusty surface. With each tap of your copper chisel, a soft plink echoes, releasing tiny flakes that drift like pale snow. The wedge you've driven into the crack feels sticky with sap. As you pour river water over it, the wood swells, forcing the stone apart. Your palms prick with the grit of limestone dust, and when you wipe your forehead, a thin smear of pale powder marks your skin. The sun's warmth on the back of your neck feels both comforting and relentless, like a lullaby that never quite quiets. Nearby, a boy apprentice, no older than 10, strokes his own chisel with reverence, learning the rhythm of angled strikes that coax the stone to yield. You catch his eye and offer a gentle nod. He responds with a shy grin, cheeks smudged with chalky residue. Here's an unexpected nugget. Some quarry workers wore rudimentary leather gloves padded with date palm fiber to protect blistered hands. Fragments of these gloves, preserved in the dry sand, have been unearthed by archaeologists, tiny relics of practical ingenuity. You slip your hands into a pair of rough gloves, feeling the fibrous padding cushion each blow. And for a moment, imagine how those ancient palms must have ached after a day's work in the sun. The quarry's rhythm is hypnotic. You lean into each strike, the copper tool meeting stone with a gentle ping, a soft echo that mingles with distant calls from overseers perched on raised platforms. Their voices rise and fall like a rhythmic chant, coordinating teams to move heavy blocks, ladle water into channels to soften the stone, and measure angles with wooden plumb bobs. You follow their cues, lifting a stone block the size of a small child onto a wooden sled, then guiding it onto rolling logs. The low, continuous thrum of wood on stone lulling your senses. Sensory detail envelops you. The faint sweetness of palm wine sipped by workers at midday, the distant clatter of pottery shards as cups topple in the wind, the rasp of sand carried on each breeze. You reach for a wooden ladle filled with cool water, infused with crushed mint leaves, drawing it to your lips. The liquid's crisp freshness snaps against your tongue, washing away limestone dust and awakening your senses for one more stretch of labor. Between your chisel strokes, you hear something unexpected, a soft hum rising from deeper within the quarry, like the world itself, exhaling. It comes from small fissures in the rock, where wind funnels through narrow passages, creating a low whistle that resonates like an ethereal chorus. Quarrymen say it's the voice of the earth speaking, some chisel in reverent silence, believing the stone offers guidance to those who listen. Archaeologists discovered remnants of miniature shrines tucked into these fissures, tiny altars to gods of stone, suggesting a ritual dimension to the worksite. Your arms quiver as you complete a row of wedge-driven cracks. Limestone panels split away, revealing smooth surfaces and fossilized shells embedded in the ancient seabed. Each slab you peel back carries the echo of a prehistoric ocean, a reminder that this desert once lay beneath turquoise seas. You press a fingertip into the rock's cold curve, feeling the faint imprint of an ancient shell, and marvel at how the builders transformed these marine fossils into monuments reaching for the sky. A lesser-known detail glints in your mind to mark each block's destination. Masons painted simple symbols, circles for the northern face triangles, for the eastern wall using ochre mixed with animal fat. These guide marks, now weathered and barely visible, allowed stonecutters in distant workshops to sort and orient blocks accurately. You trace a faded red triangle on a newly split slab, imagining the color bright as a flame under daylight. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the quarry floor, overseers signal a pause. Workers set tools aside, stretching stiff limbs and sharing small loaves of barley bread. You break off a fragment, its crust still warm, and dip it into a pot of thick lentil stew simmering over a brazier fueled by date palm fronds. The stew's savory aroma, onion, cumin, a hint of garlic fills your nostrils, grounding you in the present moment. Your hands are streaked with dust and sweat, but your mind drifts to a scholarly question when grand monuments dominate our view of ancient Egypt. Do we overlook the human toil and creative problem-solving that made them possible? You taste the bread's hearty crumb, let the stew's warmth spread through you, and consider that each chiseled block is a testament not only to royal ambition, but to workers' skill, perseverance, and quiet collaboration. Before you leave, you press your palm against the sheer face of a freshly split limestone wall. The surface is unnaturally smooth, the rock's grain visible in gentle striations that catch the waning light. You close your eyes and feel the stone's coolness seep into your flesh as if the rock itself offers solace after a day's labor. The quarry's hum grows quieter, replaced by the distant bleat of goats returning to their pens. Suggestion to heighten immersion. Consider varying sentence length, more deliberately mixing shorter, punchy lines with longer descriptive passages to mirror the quarry's rhythmic labor. You rise to a horizon ablaze with molten gold, the desert air thick and still as though it's holding its breath. Your throat dries instantly, the remnants of sleep evaporating on your tongue. Each step crunches on sun-baked sand as you press onward, eyes scanning for any promise of moisture. In this land where the sun stakes its claim, finding water isn't just a matter of comfort, it's a gamble between life and dust. A well-established fact whispers through your mind. Ancient Egyptians relied on an intricate network of canals and basin irrigation to capture the Nile's floodwaters, transforming arid plains into fertile fields. Yet beyond those grand systems, local wells, some dug by the state, others by village communities, served as vital refuges when channels ran low. You recall the memory of a mud brick well rim its edge, smoothed by countless hands, offering a promise of cool relief below the desert surface. Ahead, you spot a lone palm grove clinging to a gentle depression in the sand. Its clustered fronds ripple like a mirage, hinting at hidden water beneath. Drawing nearer, you push aside sharp palm thorns, wiping sweat from your brow as the date palm's shade fractures sunlight into dancing patterns on your skin. Beneath the largest tree, a circular stone well yawns its depth, unknown its cool draft brushing your bare arm. Your heart thumps as you secure a coil of braided rope to a sturdy peg. You lower a clay jar into the darkness, its slim shape slipping past the well's rim. The rope's fibers rub against your fingertips, the grains of sand that cling between them scratching like tiny urgings to hurry. When you tug upward, the jar emerges with a soft splash, water sloshing against its walls and dripping back into the darkness below. You bring the vessel to your lips, sipping cautiously. The water tastes faintly of earth and green algae, a reminder that life here is never pure, but always precious. Each swallow soothes the fire in your throat, and you allow your eyelids to flutter closed, savoring the cool liquid pooling at the back of your mouth. Nearby, a lizard darts across sun-cracked stone, its glazed eyes reflecting the palm canopy above. A quirky aside drifts through your thoughts. Some desert travelers carry tiny linen pouches filled with concentrated grape must thick syrup that, when dissolved in well water, lent sweetness and a hint of fruit to each drink. Archaeologists discovered such pouches in burial sites, hinting that even in death, residents valued the luxury of flavored water. You imagine dislodging one of those pouches, crushing it between calloused fingers, and stirring the sticky sweetness into your clay jar, transforming plain survival into a fleeting indulgence. The grove's stillness invites reflection. You sink onto a smooth stone massage, the ache in your calves, and listen to the hushed rustle of palms overhead. Each frond seems to murmur tales of caravans that paused here, camels kneeling at the water's edge while their handlers stirred small fires and shared gossip of distant oases. You inhale the mingled aroma of date sweetness and desert dust, feeling the grove's cool aura cloak your senses like a well-worn cloak. Beyond the grove lies a stretch of dunes, rising like gentle waves frozen in place. The sun climbs higher, its heat pressing down as if to test your resolve. You rise and continue, the rope and empty jar slung over your shoulder like a companion. Sand climbs your calves, weaving through sandal straps until each step feels muffled. Your forehead beads with sweat, and you pause to press a damp cloth against it, drawing sticky moisture from your skin and the desert's silent challenges into the fabric. A fundamental fact anchors your calm Egyptians engineered shaduf cranes, simple levered poles with counterweights to lift water from canals into irrigation basins. Though you lack a shaduf here, the principle remains. With leverage and patience, even scarce water yields. You crouch beside a low dune mold, your hands into a scoop, and catch dew droplets that glisten on morning spiderwebs. Tiny beads coalesce between your palms before slipping through your fingers, but the act reminds you that persistence, not force, wins the day. Your throat contracts with renewed thirst urging you onward. In the distance, the pale shimmers of another grove appears, date palms and tamarisks clustered around an unseen spring. You quicken your pace, the whisper of wind against sand, your solitary companion. The sunburn on your arms flares as you cross the empty expanse, each breath drawing in the mosaic of scents, parched earth, distant reeds, and a faint trace of fish from a hidden watercourse. When you arrive, the spring greets you with a quiet gurgle. A natural stone basin carved eons ago by shifting sands and flowing water holds a pool of crystalline liquid. You kneel at the edge, extend your jar, and let it fill. Light fractures through the water, scattering emerald and sapphire shards across the basin floor. You dip your head, plunge your mouth into the pool, and drink greedily, feeling life's spark rekindle in each gulp. A scholarly debate surfaces in your thoughts. Did reliance on state-managed canals foster centralized power? Or did these small springs and wells empower local communities to thrive independently? Some historians argue that royal irrigation projects created economic cohesion, while others point to village wells as lifelines of autonomy. As you swallow the last drop, that question drifts through you like a cool breeze in an oven-hot room. Refreshed, yet mindful of the desert's demands, You refill your jar and soil your hands in the basin's muck, leaving faint palm prints as ephemeral testaments to your visit. You tie the rope around your waist, secure the jar, and turn back toward the shifting dunes. Each footstep finds firmer ground, as though the desert itself welcomes your departure. Tonight's gentle insight settles like soft sand in your mind. Water in ancient Egypt was more than survival. It was ceremony, engineering, and community woven into every drop. Whether raised with a shaduf drawn from sacred springs or captured in dawn's dew, each method shaped how people balanced power, cooperation, and daily life. As the spring's laughter fades behind you and the dunes loom ahead, carry this thought like a sip of cool water. In the world's driest stretches, ingenuity flows wherever thirst persists. Let that realization soothe you as you gaze at an imagined horizon where water and desert dance in silent accord. You follow a narrow alley of sun-warmed mud brick stalls, feeling the market's pulse rise with each step. Early murmurs of bargaining swell into a soft roar woven together by the scents of cumin, fresh fish, and ripening dates. Your sandals pick their way through scattered straw mats, and the cool morning breeze carries these mingled aromas like an invitation to explore deeper into this symphony of commerce. A well-known reality greets your senses. Ancient Egyptian markets served as social hubs where farmers, fishermen, and artisans converged to exchange goods, news, and gossip. Here on simple woven mats, baskets of barley, piles of onions, and pyramids of sun-ripened figs glitter under the sun. You pause to admire a display of vibrant vegetables, cucumbers, still beaded with dew radishes, the color of sunrise, and lentils spilling from clay jars like tiny amber coins. You reach for a cucumber, its skin cool and slightly bumpy beneath your fingers. A vendor, his skin the color of polished mahogany, hands you a slender flint knife. You slice a thin ribbon and taste it, juicy, green, and crisp, with the faintest hint of river mud joining the vegetal freshness. Around you, children dart between legs, giggling as they chase a stray duck, its quacks blending with staccato drum beats from a traveling musician. Some market-goers carry small pouches of saffron dyed with crushed madder root, sprinkling a few threads into their purchases to ward off market curses, bad deals, spoiled goods, or lingering misfortunes. Scholars debate whether this was mere superstition or an early form of consumer protection. You spot one of these pouches tied to a merchant's belt, a vivid dash of crimson against coarse linen. Further along, a fishmonger displays his morning catch on a bed of wet reeds. Nile perch glisten, silver catfish lie mottled against clay plates, and tilapia show off their patterned scales. You inhale the briny, slightly sweet scent of fresh water and imagine small villages upriver organize their diets around such bounty. With a nod from the merchant, you taste a thin fillet, salted and sun-dried, chewy, savory, and rich with the river's essence. Nearby, a weaver unfurls bolts of dyed linen in shades of indigo and saffron. Her cloth, soft and faintly perfumed with the spices she used in dye baths, ripples like fabric caught in a breeze when you lift a corner. You feel its fine weave, marveling at how flax fibers transform from rough stalk to elegant garment. The weaver explains through gestures and broken phrases that indigo came from imported beans, while saffron's golden hue required careful harvesting of crocus petals at dawn. A fundamental debate bubbles beneath this colorful bustle. Did ancient Egyptian trade empower local producers or enrich a merchant class that sat above farmers and artisans? Some historians argue markets democratized access to goods and information, while others claim that wealth funneled upward into the hands of elites who controlled caravans and storerooms. As you finger a length of linen, you keep that question in mind. Your path leads you to a spice stall where jars bristle with fenugreek, coriander, cinnamon, and small sacks of honey-dipped frankincense. You inhale a pinch of each, letting the scents swirl warmth from cinnamon citrus notes in coriander, a resinous sweetness from incense. The spice merchant, an energetic woman with bright eyes, offers you a taste of coriander. Her palm is dusted green. You savor its sharp lemony bite, a flavor that could brighten any stew or bread. Beyond spices lies a pottery stand, small bowls glazed in azure jugs painted with stylized lotus blooms and cups marked with simple black lines. A potter with clay-stained hands turns a miniature vessel on his wheel, shaping it with deft palms. You watch as water-dampened clay rises into form, then catch a turned bowl as it tumbles off the wheel. Its walls feel thin, yet sturdy, the glaze still warm from the kiln's afterglow. Nearby, the village baker's wood-fired oven puffs gentle smoke. You press close to feel the heat and inhale the scent of baking grains. Round loaves, flat discs, bearing the baker's unique falcon wing mark, rest on straw mats. You tear a fresh loaf, the crust crisp and warm, the crumbs soft and slightly sour. A swipe of date syrup on the bread yields a sweet, sticky contrast that melts beneath your tongue. Musicians set up by a columned fountain, a lyre player drapes strings beneath his fingers, while a percussionist taps small drums with gentle insistence. Their melody drifts above the market's clamor-knitting interactions, together with soft harmonies. The lyre's resonant notes seem to ease haggling voices, while the drum's steady pulse underscores the market's heartbeat. In larger markets, scribes maintain crude tally boards, wooden tablets etched with charcoal to record bulk transactions of grain or livestock. These scribes, trained in hieratic script, sometimes whisper deals before public announcements. Modern researchers question whether these secret ledgers tip the scales of fairness or simply streamlined record-keeping. You almost see a scribe's quick strokes marking symbols beneath a shaded corner. You step into a side alley where women sell remedies jars of honey infused with hyssop, bundles of dried chamomile, and small flasks of fermented pomegranate juice touted for its health benefits. You inhale the soothing chamomile, feeling a calm tug behind your eyelids. A healer offers you a sip of pomegranate wine, tart ruby red, and refreshing enough to cut through the morning's dust. Your final stop is a trader's tent filled with exotic imports, Mediterranean seashell fragments, carnelian beads from the east, and ornate bronze mirrors polished to a reflective sheen. You hold a mirror to your face and see sun-kissed skin framed by the market's chaos. A traveler from the coast points to the handle shaped like a lotus stem and notes that mirrors once symbolized truth and self-reflection, believed to reveal not just your face, but your fate. Tonight's reflection drifts through your mind as you step back onto the sunlit street. Markets are more than exchanges of goods. They're crossroads of culture, gossip, and shared humanity. Each sliced cucumber, dyed cloth, and salted fish fillet carries stories of fields, rivers, and distant lands. Let the market's scents, sounds, and textures linger like soft notes in your memory, reminding you that community thrives on small exchanges as much as grand gestures. You step into a courtyard wreathed in pale morning light where rows of earthen kilns stand like silent sentinels built from sun-baked mud brick. Their domes rise on low pedestals, each one breathing thin wisps of smoke into the cool air. You feel the heat ripple against your skin even before you reach the nearest opening, the faint crackle of embers and the tang of burnt straw greeting you like distant applause. This is where clay meets fire and ordinary vessels emerge as tools of daily life ceremony and even the afterlife. A well-established fact grounds your fingers as you brush away loose sand from a kiln's lip. Ancient Egyptian potters mastered the art of controlling temperature gradients in their wood-fired domes, stacking fuel and clay wares in precise layers. Lower chambers burned hottest ideal for robust storage jars, while upper ledges held delicate bowls glazed in lustrous faience. You step closer, inhaling that warm, earthy aroma, smoke mingled with clay dust, a scent that still lingers in modern ceramic studios. Inside the courtyard, apprentices move with quiet purpose. You watch as one young woman leans into a kiln mouth, sliding a long pole tipped with a metal hook to shift a half-fired amphora deeper into the fire's heart. Sparks spiral upward, scattering like tiny fireflies across her robe's hem. She emerges, face aglow, and kneels to inspect the vessel's curved shoulder. A small crack has formed, but the glaze's iridescence catches the light shifting from turquoise to emerald as you revolve the jar in your hands. Here's a quirky aside tomb. Excavations have revealed small trial pieces, miniature pots buried alongside models of daily life, suggesting that potters tested new glazes or firing techniques in secret before risking expensive full-size wares. One such shard, barely larger than your palm, bears a mysterious metallic sheen that modern chemists attribute to traces of copper and lead in the glaze, a potent combination now banned but once prized for its jewel-like finish. You imagine those ancient potters experimenting at dusk, tiptoeing through twilight to test their secret formulas in the deep glow of residual kiln heat. You step back to admire a line of cooling racks where vessels rest on woven mats laid atop low platforms. Amphorae with flared rims stand beside squat water jugs, their greenish surfaces echoing the floodplain's lush tones. Between them, small offering bowls bear hand-painted lotus motifs in a delicate ochre. You trail your fingertip along a painted petal, feeling the glaze's slight bump and the artisan's careful hand in each curve. A fundamental scholarly debate simmers beneath the kiln's steady hum. Did state-run workshops dominate production? Or did independent artisans thrive alongside centralized factories? Some historians point to records of royal allocations, clay quotas reserved for temple commissions and funerary goods as proof of rigorous state control. Others cite graffiti scratched onto kiln walls, names, workshop marks, even complaints about delayed fuel deliveries as evidence of lively private shops operating under the radar. As you turn a small bowl in your palm, you hold that question lightly, sensing that both systems likely coexisted in a nuanced balance. The sensory world envelops you. The crackle of scorched reed mats beneath your boots, the distant clang of a metal tool tapping earthenware for quality checks, and the occasional hiss as steam escapes a still humid pot. You breathe deeply, letting the mingled aromas smoke clay and a faint waft of date palm resin used to seal larger jars fill your lungs. Each inhalation feels like a steadying hand anchoring you in this moment between raw earth and finished artifact. A master potter, His hair dusted with fine clay, his robes stained a mosaic of past firings approaches with measured steps. He unslings a wooden paddle, its surface darkened by centuries of use, and taps a nearby jug. The crisp talk resonates like a drumbeat in a hush. He nods, once satisfied that the pot's walls are thick enough to store grain without bursting, yet thin enough to cool quickly when used as a cooking vessel. You follow his gaze to a half-moon carving near the jug's base, a marksman's signature indicating the workshop's lineage and quality standard. An unexpected detail glimmers in your mind. Forensic analysis of residue inside some kiln-fired jars has uncovered traces of early cosmetics, ground malachite, and coal mixtures stored alongside oils. It seems that potters sometimes doubled as apothecaries, supplying small jars of eye paint and scented salves. You catch a whiff of a lingering sweet musk, perhaps, from a residual layer of crushed myrrh in a display jar, and imagine women gathering before dawn to sweep coal into their lashes using brushes carved from reed. You wander to a low table strewn with clay tablets listing kiln schedules. Day 1, load lower chamber with fuel. Day 2, preheat upper arch. Day 3, insert glazed trial pieces. Day 4, peak fire. The tables are scored with corrections erasures where apprentices miscalculated burn times or misjudged wind direction. You run your fingers over the faint indentations, feeling the record keeper's careful deliberation. In an age before thermometers, they measured time, smoke color, and flame height to calibrate each firing an ancient blend of art and proto-science. Your gaze drifts skyward as smoke spirals into midday's bright blue. A breeze stirs the courtyard, lifting curls of dust that dance like miniature tornadoes. You settle on a stone curb and unwrap a small parcel of unleavened flatbread, simple, nutty, and perfect for dunking into a bowl of cold lentil soup served in a recently cooled pot. The soup's warmth contrasts with the kiln's residual heat beneath your feet, sending a comforting ripple through your chest. Tonight's reflective question drifts through your thoughts like smoke on the wind. When clay vessels outlast their creators by millennia, do we honor the potter's hand or the clay itself, rising from the earth to bear witness? Each bowl, jar, and amphora carries both material memory and human intent. As you sip your soup, let yourself wonder which element truly shapes history. You finish your meal and stand dusting off your robes as the courtyard shadows lengthen. Apprentices fan embers within the kilns for an evening, firing a quieter flame reserved for fragile ceremonial wares destined for temple offerings. You lean in to catch the embers glow, its orange warmth pulsing like a heartbeat. For a moment, you feel the kiln's silent pulse align with your own. Before you depart, you place a hand on the warmest kiln dome, its surface smoothed by centuries of wind and clay. The heat hums against your palm, a connection spanning thousands of years between ancient artisans and your present self. Let that quiet warmth settle in your bones as you step away from the courtyard, carrying with you the delicate balance of earth, fire, and human hands that shaped a civilization's vessels, and through them, its daily rituals. You slip into a low-domed bakery chamber where the air hums with gentle warmth and the scent of rising dough. The floor is strewn with coarse mats of woven reeds, and on each rounded lumps of dough rest under linen cloths, swelling slowly like creatures awakening from slumber. A small hearth at one end glows orange, its embers crackling softly an invitation for raw flour to become fragrant loaf. A well-known fact bread was the cornerstone of ancient Egyptian diets baked daily in community bakeries. Emmer wheat, coarsely ground, yielded dense doughs that sustained laborers and nobles alike. You run your fingertips over a mound of dough, feeling its pliant surface spring back beneath your touch, proof that fermentation has begun. The yeast, captured from wild airborne cultures, lived in tattered cloth bags or wooden troughs passed down from one baker to the next. Your hands move to a wooden trough filled with pale dough. You scoop up a handful, kneading with slow, deliberate folds. The grains press into your palms, tiny reminders of sunlit fields and patient harvests. As you fold and press, the dough emits a soft sigh, releasing warmth that teases the thin linen overhead. You breathe in the yeasty perfume, its humid sweetness lingering at the back of your throat. A quirky aside, archaeologists have found small trial pieces, miniature pots and bowls buried alongside tomb models of daily life. These test firings let potters experiment with new glazes or techniques before risking full-size wares. One such shard bears a metallic sheen from copper and lead in the glaze, a combination now banned, but once prized for its jewel-like finish. You imagine ancient potters under dusk's fading light, secretly testing formulas in the kiln's glow. You step back to admire a line of cooling racks where vessels rest on woven mats atop low platforms. Amphorae with flared rims stand beside squat water jugs, their greenish surfaces echoing the floodplain's lush tones. Between them, small offering bowls bear hand-painted lotus motifs in ochre. You trace a painted petal with your fingertip, sensing the artisan's careful hand in each curve. A fundamental scholarly debate simmers. Did state-run workshops dominate production, or did independent artisans thrive alongside centralized factories? Some historians point to royal records, clay quotas for temple commissions, and funerary goods as proof of state control. Others cite graffiti scratched into kiln walls, names, workshop marks, complaints about delayed fuel deliveries as evidence of lively private shops. Holding a small bowl, you sense both systems likely coexisted in a nuanced balance. The sensory world envelops you, the crackle of scorched reed mats beneath your boots, the soft thump of loaves on cooling shelves, the occasional hiss as steam escapes a still humid pot. You inhale the mixed aromas, smoked clay and a hint of date palm resin used to seal larger jars. Each breath steadies you in this moment between raw earth and finished artifact. A master potter, his hair dusted with fine clay robes stained by years of use, approaches with measured steps. He taps a nearby jug with a wooden paddle, its crisp tone echoing like a drumbeat. Satisfied, he gestures to set the pot aside. Its walls are thick enough to store grain without bursting, but thin enough to cool quickly on a cooking fire. You note a half-moon carving at the jug's base, the workshop's signature and seal of quality. Surprise detail forensic analysis of residue inside kiln-fired jars has revealed traces of cosmetics, ground malachite, and coal mixtures stored alongside oils. It seems potters doubled as apothecaries, supplying small jars of eye paint and scented salves. A faint musk of crushed myrrh lingers on a display jar, evoking dawn rituals in which women swept coal into their lashes with reeds. You wander to a low table strewn with clay tablets listing kiln schedules. Day 1, load lower chamber with fuel. Day 2, preheat upper arch. Day 3, insert glaze trials. Day 4, peak firing. Each schedule bears corrections erasures where apprentices miscalculated burn times or wind direction. You trace a set of indentations, imagining the clerk's careful deliberation. In an age before thermometers, they gauged temperature by time, smoke color, and flame height, an ancient blend of art and proto-science. Smoke spirals into the bright blue sky as apprentices fan embers for an evening firing reserve heat for delicate ceremonial wares destined for temple offerings. You lean in to catch the ember's glow, its orange warmth pulsing like a heartbeat. For a moment, you feel the kiln's silent pulse align with your own. Before you depart, you place a hand on the warmest kiln dome, its surface smoothed by wind and clay over centuries. The heat hums against your palm, bridging millennia between ancient artisans and your present self. Let that quiet warmth settle in your bones as you step away, carrying with you the delicate balance of earth, fire, and human hands that shaped a civilization's vessels, and through them, its daily rituals. You slip into a cool, shadowed scriptorium tucked behind a shaded courtyard where shafts of sunlight filter through narrow slits and illuminate drifting dust motes like tiny lanterns. The air is faintly sweet with the scent of fresh papyrus, mingled with a whisper of ink and reed fiber. You sink onto a low wooden bench beside a slanted writing desk, its surface scored by countless quills and pots of black cinnabar and ochre inks. A well-known fact settles into your mind. As you settle in ancient Egypt, scribes formed an elite cadre whose mastery of hieratic and hieroglyphic scripts governed public records, religious texts, and private correspondence. Education began early. Boys as young as 6 learned to prepare reed pens by cutting their tips into fine points, then practiced endless rows of strokes to perfect their hand. You lift a slender reed stylus, feeling its smooth shaft cool against your fingertips, and imagine dipping its nib into a shallow bowl of ground carbon ink mixed with gum arabic. Before you lies a crisp sheet of papyrus, its pale surface composed of overlapping strips of riverbed reeds, a tactile blend of smoothness and slight fibrousness. You draw the stylus across the sheet, leaving a crisp black line that soaks into the papyrus's weave. Each stroke feels deliberate, a quiet ritual connecting you to generations of writers who recorded temple hymns, census returns, and even grocery lists. The ink smells faintly of charred wood and sweet resin, clinging to your fingers if you pause too long. A quirky aside flits through your thoughts. Some industrious scribes customize their reed pens with tiny leather tassels or carved patterns into the shafts, believing these personal touches conferred better control or simply made the pens more pleasing to hold. Archaeologists have uncovered reed fragments etched with decorative motifs, hinting that even in this studious environment, creativity bloomed. You imagine a scribe pausing mid-line to admire a carved lotus motif on his pen, letting out a soft chuckle at his own vanity. Nearby, an apprentice battles a stubborn blotch. He dips his stylus too deeply, and a small puddle of ink pools on the papyrus, smudging adjacent lines. With careful precision, he scrapes at the puddle's edge, using the back of his stylus, lifting damp ink like a painter correcting a canvas. Papyrus is surprisingly resilient. A light scrape can remove excess ink without tearing the sheet. You lean closer, the scrape's faint whisper tickling your ear. The scriptorium hums with hushed concentration, the scratch of reeds on papyrus, the whispered counting of lines, the soft clatter of wooden rulers tapping desks. You inhale deeply, letting the ink's resinous edge and the papyrus's earthy undertones settle in your chest. Each inhalation feels like a gentle anchor, pulling you into the steady rhythm of transcription. A fundamental scholarly debate drifts through your mind. Did scribes merely serve as neutral recorders, or did they shape the messages they copied, subtly adjusting phrasing to flatter patrons or align with political winds? Some modern historians argue that surviving letters reveal traces of editorial bias, as those who penned diplomatic correspondence smoothed over unflattering details. Others maintain that scribes adhered strictly to dictated texts, bound by a professional code of ethics. As you copy a temple inventory listing jars of scented oils and bundles of incense, you wonder how many words were quietly polished before being set in stone or stored in archives. Beyond the rows of desks, a senior scribe in feathered robes inspects completed scrolls. He unrolls a finished section, holds it up to the light, and judges the consistency of stroke thickness and the spacing of columns. A faint crackle issues as he rolls and unrolls the papyrus like distant thunder. He nods, once satisfied. Finished sections will be tied with linen ribbons and delivered to temples, courts, or wealthy patrons, each scroll a precious commodity, sometimes worth more than a servant's annual wage. You glance at a nearby shelf stacked with jars of colored pigments: red, ochre, yellow, orpiment, blue, azurite. Illuminated headings and cartouches required these hues mixed with binders like egg white or honey. A decorative flourish in brilliant saffron might mark the start of a chapter, while deep green could highlight the name of a goddess. You imagine the slow meditative mixing process, stirring pigments into a fine paste, testing consistency on spare papyrus, then decanting into small pottery palettes. A lesser-known detail resonates. Some scribes applied a light coating of diluted plaster to papyrus sheets, intended for official decrees, creating a smoother surface that resisted ink bleed. Remnants of this plaster layer calcium-rich films have been detected on fragments in museum collections. You envision dipping a sheet into a shallow lime bath, letting it dry to a ghostly sheen before pen ever touches paper. The scriptorium's ambient sounds shift as a breeze whistles through the open doorway, carrying the murmur of temple bells and the scent of jasmine from courtyard gardens. You pause, stylus hovering, and look up just in time to see a pair of white doves flutter across an open archway before vanishing into the bright midday sky. Their cooing follows like gentle reminders of freedom, strange companions in a world devoted to careful record-keeping. You return to your column of text, inhaling the breeze-laced aromas and feeling the papyrus's faint flecks under each stroke. The apprentice's earlier blotch has been smoothed into an intentional smudge. Some older scribes believed that small imperfections humanized a text, signaling authenticity. You let that idea settle. In a realm of precise symbols, a tiny flaw might speak louder than perfect copies. Slowly, you complete the final line of your assigned text, an accounting of temple revenues measured in Deben and kite. You tap the stylus's tip thrice on the desk, a silent sign of completion, and close your scroll. The surface gleams with fresh ink, each symbol crisp and ready for posterity. You tie the scroll with a neat linen ribbon, its texture cool and slightly rough against your fingers. Tonight's question drifts through your mind like a stray fiber on papyrus. Do scribes' hands merely transmit words, or do they leave intangible fingerprints, echoes of choice mood and subtle bias on every document? When future eyes read these lines, Will they sense the writer's careful deliberation or only the ink's silent imprint? You rise from the bench, letting the stylus rest in its ink pot. The scriptorium feels alive with the echoes of countless scribes, each whisper of reed on papyrus carrying knowledge decree and daily concerns across millennia. As you step into the courtyard's dappled light, the scent of ink and papyrus clings to your robes, a faint testament to the craft that shaped civilizations. Carry this gently in your thoughts. In a world carved of stone and clay, the scribe's pen flows like water shaping memory, conveying power and reminding us that every word we write carries a life of its own. You slip through a narrow portal carved into the temple's outer wall, stepping into a hushed, shadowed world where torchlight dances on sandstone columns. The air feels thick, infused with warmed stone and the lingering haze of burning incense. Every footstep echoes softly against polished floors worn smooth by generations of worshipers. You sense a hush fall over you as if the walls themselves are holding their breath in reverence. A well-documented fact settles around you: ancient Egyptian temple rituals, unfolded according to rigid schedules timed to sunrise, noon, and sunset. Priests and priestesses donned linen kilts and calfskin sandals, their bodies washed in perfumed oils before each ceremony. At dawn, they greeted the rising sun by presenting offerings, bread, beer, and fresh lotus blooms to statues of the gods. You watch a young priest approach the sanctuary, cradling a tray of loaves and a cup of wine, his movements deliberate, almost ritualized in their precision. The low murmur of chanting drifts through the columns. A chorus of voices, male and female, rises in measured cadences reciting hymns to Amun-Ra. Their words, ancient and melodic, hover on the air like a gentle tide. You close your eyes, letting the chant wash over you. Each syllable is a soft roll of tongue against palate. Each pause, a breath drawn deep. The sensation is akin to floating in a warm bath, each note embracing you and guiding you deeper into stillness. Nearby, an attendant swings a censer, a small bronze bowl suspended by 3 chains in slow circles. Wisps of frankincense smoke spiral upward in delicate curls, carrying a sweet, balsamic warmth. You inhale the resinous scent, feeling it seep into your lungs and spread through your chest like a comforting shawl. It's easy to imagine that fragrance lingering in your hair, a subtle signature of the divine. A curious aside emerges: some temples employed water priests who carried small jars of sacred Nile water. During rituals, they sprinkled droplets on the floor or over the congregation, believing the living water purified bodies and spirits. Archaeologists have found ceremonial ladles inscribed with lotus patterns, tools used to scoop and scatter the water. You spot one laid aside on a marble platform, its carved handle still bearing traces of mineral crust. As the chanting rises, a troupe of cymbal players steps forward. Their bronze discs, clasped between fingers, ring out with crisp precision, adding a bright patter that weaves through the deeper vocals. The cymbals' clash echoes off column capitals like distant laughter cutting through the incense haze with a lively sparkle. You feel the vibration in your chest, a soft percussion that quickens your heartbeat in time with the rhythm. Behind the musicians, a quartet of oboists raises slender wooden reeds to their lips. The oboe's mellow hum resonates like warm wind through reeds at the river's edge. You close your eyes again, letting that gentle drone cradle your thoughts. Combined with the cymbals and chant, the music, creates a tapestry of sound, woven threads that settle around you like a soft blanket. A fundamental scholarly debate drifts through your mind. Were these grand temple ceremonies central to state power, reinforcing royal authority through spectacle? Or did they primarily serve local communities' spiritual needs? Some historians argue that pharaohs sponsored elaborate rites to legitimize their rule, while others emphasize the temple's role as neighborhood centers where everyday people sought healing and guidance. As you listen, you feel both dimensions intertwine: political pageantry and personal solace, blending in each breath. The high priest steps into the inner sanctum where a gilded statue of the deity stands draped in fresh linen. He lifts the statue's hem, drapes it in floral garlands, and presents a loaf of bread on a gold plate. The statue's serene face catches flickers of torchlight, its eyes seeming to shimmer with quiet awareness. You imagine the sculptor's careful strokes that fashioned every curve, every crease in the linen garment, giving stone the semblance of living divinity. A subtle detail catches your attention behind the statue's niche. A narrow shaft channels morning light directly onto its face for a few seconds at dawn. This illumination miracle dramatizes the god's awakening, renewing faith with each sunrise. Visiting priests recorded these moments in temple diaries, timing processions to coincide with the light's touch. You lean close to feel the faint warmth of sunbeams long past, as if the walls still remember those luminous seconds. The congregation bows together, a soft rustle of linen folding in unison. Their combined exhalation forms a low sigh that recedes into silence. In that pause, the scent of lotus petals offered earlier in the ceremony rises like a delicate perfume, reminding you of the sacred gardens where these flowers were harvested before dawn. The priests distributed the petals to worshippers, scattering them like confetti to symbolize rebirth and renewal. A lesser-known anecdote surfaces during certain festivals. Temple scribes wrote personalized petitions on small papyrus scrolls, then tied them to lotus stems as they floated in temple ponds. The rising currents carried the petitions towards sacred groves, believed to deliver prayers directly to the gods. Fragments of these petition scrolls, waterlogged and discolored, have been found in buried shrines bearing traces of ink that can still be deciphered. You imagine your own whispered plea drifting on a breeze caught by swirling petals. The ritual advances to a section of solemn proclamation. The high priest intones the pharaoh's titles, each name resonating like a drumbeat announcing cosmic order. Each phrase underscores the ruler's divine role as guarantor of mod harmony and balance. You feel the power of language here, words carved in air, binding heaven and earth in an unbroken chain. As the ceremony winds toward closure, the cymbals soften and the oboes fall silent. Only the steady echo of the final chant remains, stretching into the stillness like a drawn-out sigh. The priest sprinkles one last handful of Nile water across the marble floor, its droplets plink like distant raindrops. You track each droplet's path, imagining how the water seeps into cracks, carrying blessings into the temple's hidden foundations. Your senses settle into a gentle hush. The air still hums with residual incense, and the cooling stone beneath your fingertips feels soothing. You inhale deeply, letting the temple's rhythmic echoes fade into a quiet pulse at the edge of your awareness. Tonight's reflective question drifts into your mind. When ritual weaves smoke sound and water into a single moment, Does belief arise from the ceremony itself, or from each participant's openness to wonder? As you step back into sunlit corridors, carry the measured incense swirls, the resonant chants and the echoing cymbals softly in your thoughts, like a sacred lullaby guiding you toward rest. You find yourself walking into the open plaza before the great sun temple, its limestone walls glowing like embers under the scorching midday light. The square is already alive, rows of stalls draped in vivid cloth flutter in a warm breeze, and long tables heaped with offerings stretch toward a raised dais where priests in golden collars cluster. The air thrums with excitement, punctuated by the steady beat of drums and the high-pitched chant of flutes. Today is the festival of Ra, the day of the sun, when the life-giving star stands at its zenith and the kingdom's devotion reaches its peak. A well-known fact echoes in your mind during the festival of Ra. Ancient Egyptians celebrated the sun god's journey across the sky with elaborate processions and feasts. Pharaohs led dignitaries carrying the solar bark, a gilded boat-shaped shrine around the temple precinct. You join the throng, feeling the ground vibrate as dancers in gold leaf masks sway to rhythmic percussion. Their movements mimic the sun's arc arms rising, dipping, and sweeping in wide circles that mirror celestial paths. The plaza is decorated with garlands of fresh lotus and palm fronds, their green and white contrasting sharply against the pale sandstone. You slip your hand through a wreath of lotus blossoms, inhaling their sweet, aquatic fragrance. Nearby, a table groans under the weight of roast duck-spiced barley cakes, jars of date wine, and bowls of candied figs. Servants pass trays brimming with food, offering you a glimmering duck leg glazed in honey and spiced with cumin. The meat is tender and sweet, a complex balance that speaks of royal kitchen's mastery. A quirky aside drifts through your thoughts. Some celebrants believe that eating the heart of a roasted duck during the festival bestowed courage and vitality for the coming year. Archaeologists have found small vegetable carvings shaped like hearts on pottery from festival sites, suggesting that both meat and symbolic garnishes played a role in the rite. You nibble on a heart-shaped turnip slice, its bitter crunch a playful echo of the duck's richness. As you move through the crowd, you notice a circle of children in simple linen tunics learning a performance. They hold miniature solar barks made of painted wood and wax, chanting in unison. Ra approaches, noon fire of life reborn. Their voices are clear and youthful, rising above the din like bells in a windstorm. A teacher guides their hands, ensuring each child lifts the bark at the right moment, enacting a tiny drama that connects them directly to the divine. Beyond the children, a group of jugglers toss bright spheres carved from alabaster, each orb painted with sun discs. They juggle in a circle around a tall brazier, burning incense, the smoke curling into a spiral that reaches toward the sunlit sky. One performer catches an orb on his head, then flips it into the air, eliciting gasps and applause. The scent of myrrh coils around you, a smoky sweetness that mingles with the sun's own heat. You step closer to the dais, where the high priest prepares to offer libations. He lifts a large chalice of frothy beer brewed with spelt and perfumed with coriander, and pours it slowly at the statue's foot. The amber liquid glints in the sun, a river of green tribute. Next, he presents burning frankincense, its resin crackling like distant fire as it sizzles on hot coals. The priest raises his arms, chanting a blessing in deep, resonant tones that ripple through gathered faces. A fundamental debate surfaces in your mind. Was the festival primarily an expression of state power, designed to unify subjects under the sun god's gaze? Or did it serve more personal needs, offering individuals a chance to leave behind worries and join in communal joy? As you watch the priest's solemn ritual, you sense both dimensions. At play, the grandeur of spectacle and the intimacy of shared celebration. Suddenly, the crowd parts, revealing a group of craftsmen wheeling forward an enormous ornate sundial carved from a black granite. Its surface gleams like obsidian, inscribed with intricate hieroglyphs marking hours and astrological signs. A scholar calls out the time hour of rebirth, and the assembled masses hail the moment with raised hands. You run your finger along the sundial's edge, feeling the cool stone beneath your palm. You imagine craftsmen polishing this device by hand, chiseling each symbol with care so that every shadow cast by the gnomon aligns with cosmic order. As the sun crosses overhead, its rays strike a polished golden disc atop the temple's roof, sending a beam of light down the central axis and igniting a row of brazier flames in a single triumphant flare. Gasps and cheers ripple through the plaza as all eyes follow the streak of fire. For a timeless second, the sun feels within reach, its power made tangible by that spark of flame. Amid the celebration, you taste a small cup of tangy pomegranate wine offered by a traveling vintner. The liquid slides across your tongue with sharp sweetness, a perfect counterpoint to the honeyed roast you sampled earlier. You swallow and feel coolness spread across your chest, a gentle respite from the roasting sun overhead. A lesser-known anecdote surfaces. Some festival goers carried small mirrors to capture reflections of sunlight, believing that holding a shard of radiance against the skin could heal ailments or ward off malevolent spirits. Excavations around festival grounds have uncovered dozens of bronze mirror fragments, evidence that these portable reflections were as much talismans as cosmetic tools. You hold your wine cup up to catch a glint of sunlight, momentarily blinded by the flash before you lower it with a soft laugh. Drummers on an elevated platform shift their rhythm, transitioning into a slow, heart-like cadence that invites the dancers to pause and form concentric rings. Men and women clasp hands, spinning in widening circles that echo the sun's trajectory. You are swept into the dance, your footfalls measured and steady, your arms raised in a gentle arc. The communal movement feels like a living sacrament, a collective homage to the fiery star that sustains all life. You glance upward as the sun begins its descent, the light softening from fierce white to a honeyed glow. The high priest lifts his staff and speaks a final benediction, and the crowd lowers its arms in unison. A hush descends, brief but profound, before the plaza bursts into applause and the cheers roll like waves. The festival's peak has passed, but its warmth lingers in the air, in your chest, and in every shared glance. Tonight's open question drifts into your mind like a drifting petal. When a civilization casts its every resource into honoring a celestial force, does ritual shape belief, or does belief shape ritual? Are you moved by the festival's grandeur, or by something deeper? The sense that you too share in the ancient bond between earth and sun. As you step away from the plaza, the scent of incense still sweet on the breeze and the echo of drums fading behind you, carry that question gently. Let the memory of gilded barks, spinning dancers, and sudden flame settle in your thoughts like embers glowing in twilight, warm companions for the journey toward restful slumber. You slip into a cool, dimly lit chamber hidden beneath the necropolis's sweeping corridors. The air here carries a reverent hush, mingled with the faint, sticky aroma of heated pitch. Flickering torches cast wavering shadows across walls lined with recessed niches, each cradling a linen-wrapped form. As you step forward, the soft scrape of your sandals on stone echoes like a whispered invitation to look closer. A well-documented fact anchors your senses. Ancient Egyptians perfected embalming to preserve both body and spirit for the journey beyond death. Their rituals unfolded in elaborate stages: evisceration, dehydration, anointing, and wrapping, each step governed by sacred texts and precise timing. You pause at a low alabaster basin filled with coarse natron salt, its crystalline grains glinting like frozen tears. Skilled embalmers scooped handfuls over each corpse, drawing out moisture and arresting decay. Even now, the air tastes faintly saline, a reminder that this salt secured immortality for pharaohs and commoners alike. Ahead, a solitary embalmer tends to a partially draped figure laid on a raised slab. Pale linen strips, streaked with yellow resin, spiral gently around the form's head and torso. The resin's scent, warm balsamic, with a whisper of pine, drifts across your skin, soothing yet subtly sharp. You inhale deeply, noticing how that sweetness mingles with the stone's chill, creating a calm tension that feels almost meditative. A quirky aside surfaces: some embalmers added fragrant substances, cinnamon, myrrh, and cassia, to their resin to mask odors and provide pleasant aromas for the deceased's passage. Archaeologists have uncovered tiny sealed jars labeled spiced unguent in tomb storerooms, evidence that mummies sometimes rested in layers of scented richness. You imagine dipping your finger into one of those jars, letting the powdered bark dust your fingertips with its warm spice. The embalmer dips a stiff bristled brush into a bowl of heated pitch, dark, viscous, and glossy, and glides it across the linen. Each stroke leaves a sealing sheen, as if binding the form's essence within its wrappings. When a drop flicks onto the stone, it hisses softly, reminding you that fire itself participates in this silent rite. Nearby, an assistant carries small bundles of palm fiber soaked in scented oils. They press each bundle against the wrapped limbs, coating the linen in pale gold droplets. The oil's fragrance, floral with a hint of almond, rises in the still air. You lean closer as the assistant pats a bundle onto the figure's foot, feeling the warmth and inhaling a melody of flower and nut that eases any chill. A fundamental scholarly debate emerges. Did the choice of aromatic oils reflect deeper symbolic meanings? Rebirth purity, divine favor, or were they practical solutions for odor control and worker health? Some Egyptologists argue that specific oils aligned with deities, frankincense for Ra or cedar for Osiris, while others suggest availability and cost-dictated selections. As you watch another figure adorned with bright blue faience beads at wrist and ankle, you let the question settle like resin in your mind. Your sandal straps sigh as you shift your weight and step toward a bench stacked with neatly folded linen. Each roll is crisp and white, edged with colored stripes that signify family lineage or professional guild. You trace a fingertip along the weave, marveling that these very linens, preserved beneath sands for millennia, still carry faint traces of ancient fingerprints. A lesser-known detail glimmers under the torchlight. Some families commissioned identity tags, small cartonnage labels tied to the linen like luggage markers. These tags bore the deceased's name titles and a brief prayer to guide the soul. Excavations have uncovered tags shaped like tiny Shabti figures, suggesting identity and servitude were affixed to the mummy in one symbolic act. You imagine holding such a tag, feeling its raised hieroglyphs under your thumb as you whisper a name lost to time. In one corner, a senior embalmer sprinkles fine powder ground cinnamon perhaps into the linen layers before wrapping the final strips around the head. The powder drifts down like coppery motes in the torchlight. Some believed that spice preserved not only flesh, but memory, its lingering scent echoing the person's essence. You inhale the drifting dust and swear you can almost sense a pulse beneath the linen, as if life itself clings to these aromatic artifacts. A row of sealed coffins stands nearby, each lid carved with protective symbols: ankhs, the eye of Horus, and feathered wings. One coffin bears a gilded mask whose painted eyes still reflect torchlight with uncanny clarity. You kneel to study its features, the curve of the lips, the arch of the brows, and the flicker of ochre paint. The mask's gaze feels neither alive nor vacant, but somewhere in between, as though inviting you to share its hush. Tonight's gentle reflection emerges as you step back in death ritual scent texture and symbol intertwine to create a final sanctuary for the spirit. Each resin-soaked layer, oil-blessed bundle, and linen strip carries intention care to stave off decay, reverence for the departed, and hope for immortality. Let these elements swirl softly in your mind, as comforting as a lullaby woven from whispering linen and fragrant pitch. As you rise to leave the embalming chamber, the cool stone floor seems to cradle your steps, guiding you back toward the desert's eternal silence. Let the vision of hissing pitch, fragrant oils, and gleaming tags settle in your thoughts like sacred dust. May the memory of these rituals, part practical craft, part solemn prayer, carry you gently into the night's journey where rest awaits like a well-wrapped soul at the dawn of eternity. You step onto the sun-baked plain where the latest pyramid project rises like a solitary mountain against the horizon. The ground beneath your sandals is firm but warm dust, swirling in pale eddies around your ankles as the wind sighs through half-built stone blocks. Around you, thousands of workers, stonemasons, haulers, and labor gangs move in choreographed rhythm, each role honed by months of practice and necessity. Today, you're one of them, summoned by the pharaoh's decree to lend muscle to this colossal undertaking. A well-established fact settles in your mind. Ancient Egyptian pyramid construction relied not only on skilled artisans, but on a vast workforce drawn from seasonal corvée labor, local villages, and even volunteer crews seeking royal favor. You press your palm against the side of a freshly cut limestone block, its surface still smooth from copper chisels, and feel its cool weight radiating heat. Each stone, meticulously cut at the quarry and numbered for its destination, will travel hundreds of meters before fitting into the pyramid's perfect geometry. Your task for now is hauling. You step onto a reinforced wooden sledge beneath the stone block. With your hands pressed to the rounded beams, you glide forward as a team of 20 haulers grips thick ropes looped around the sledge's front. Their feet dig into the sand, creating tiny troughs with each coordinated pull. You inhale the mingled scents of sun-warmed wood sweat and crushed sandalwood chips sprinkled by overseers to grease the path, an ingenious lubricant that reduces friction and honors tradition. A curious aside drifts through your thoughts. Some crews painted their sledges with protective symbols, Ankh's wedge-shot eyes and spiral motifs, believing these glyphs would grant safe passage across the desert sands and appease earth deities. Fragments of painted sledges have been unearthed near pyramid sites, the pigments preserved by arid winds. You wonder whether those symbols eased laborers' toil or merely offered comfort through ritual in an unyielding environment. Every pull counts. The sledge's runners groan as they slide over reed mats laid atop the sand. You feel the slight give beneath your feet, the mats cushioning each step and preventing erosion. Nearby, overseers clad in linen kilts and carrying long staves pace beside seated teams, tapping their staves against the ground in a steady rhythm that guides the haulers' chant, "Hut, hut, 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 hut." Their voices rise and fall like distant waves, uniting exertion and song into a single meditative force. Sensory details surround you. The hot wind brushing across exposed arms, carrying dust into your nostrils. The distant clatter of mallets trimming stone faces. The faint hiss of crushed reeds underfoot. You pause, pressing your forehead to the sledge's beam, feeling its warmth seep through your linen sandals. When you pull back, beads of sweat have formed on your brow, salty and sharp against your lips. A fundamental scholarly debate simmers beneath the surface. Did the workforce's organization reflect coercion or community pride? Some historians point to papyrus records documenting rations of beer and bread per worker, proof of state-managed provisioning. Others highlight graffiti scratched into inner chamber walls, names, workshop marks, even complaints about delayed fuel deliveries, suggesting camaraderie and creative authorship. You recall seeing such graffiti in a tomb corridor, names preceded by phrases like "of the silent walls" or "belonging to the morning shift," each etching a human echo in stone. Your team halts at a pre-dug trough where water carriers stand ready with leather skins of chilled Nile water. You reach for a skin, feeling its supple surface cool against your hot palm. The first sip washes away dust and fatigue, the water tasting faintly of clay and algae. You close your eyes, letting the coolness settle in your chest before dipping the skin beneath the sledge and offering it to the next hauler with a nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared endurance. Once at the pyramid's base, you switch roles. The stone block will be hoisted up a temporary ramp using wooden levers and earthen pathways sloped to reduce the gradient. You position a sturdy lever beneath the sledge's edge, and with a few others, brace your feet against the sandstone platform to lift. The block shifts with a collective grunt, rolling onto the ramp's first tier. You brace again, muscles quivering, and lift once more. Tier by tier, the pyramid grows, stepped layers reaching toward the sky, each block a testament to human will. A lesser-known anecdote surfaces. Certain workers carried small pouches of crushed natron mixed with oil, rubbing the mixture into their calloused hands to prevent splitting and keep muscles supple. Excavations of worker villages uncovered broken amphorae containing natron residues, hinting that this protective paste was as vital as daily rations. You sniff your palms, catching a faint mineral note, and imagine the paste's gentle sting easing blistered skin. As the day wanes and shadows stretch across the ramp, overseers sound the final halt. You step back, watching the last block settle into place with a soft thunk. The setting sun bathes the worksite in golden light, outlining the pyramid's emergent form against a lavender sky. Workers pause to admire the day's progress, a silent moment of shared achievement, before clearing tools and collecting leftover rations. Tonight's reflective question drifts through your mind like a cooling breeze in a project spanning generations. Is the pyramid's power born from the pharaoh's decree or from the pulsing unity of countless hands and voices? Each block rests on human resolve, measured taps of the chisel, coordinated chants on the sand, and quiet acts of self-care with natron paste. As you gather your belongings and step away from the ramp, carry this thought gently: greatness in stone stands on the foundation of collective spirit, one measured effort at a time. You step through a low tunnel carved beneath the pyramid's base, entering a labyrinth of narrow passages where the air grows cool and scented faintly with limestone dust. Your footsteps echo in rhythmic drips water, seeping through ancient cracks while torchlight flickers against smooth walls polished by centuries of passing sand. Ahead, the corridor opens into a larger chamber where the heart of the structure awaits. A well-known fact reverberates in your mind: pyramids concealed complex internal layouts, burial chambers, false passages, and relieving vaults, all designed to thwart tomb robbers and protect the pharaoh's eternal rest. You follow the polished stone floor, noting subtle changes in ceiling height that signal hidden niches and shifting passage angles. Each corner feels calculated, each drop in elevation, hinting at unseen chambers beyond. Your path arrives at the grand sarcophagus chamber. The walls here are lined with deep grooves channels once filled with gold leaf that caught torchlight like living fire. You trace a fingertip along one groove, feeling its cool depth beneath your touch. Above a vaulted ceiling, arches high, decorated with painted stars on a lapis blue background. The constellations of Orion and Sirius shimmer overhead, guiding the deceased toward the celestial realm. A quirky aside dances through your thoughts. Some architects included dummy chambers, empty rooms painted to resemble burial halls, hoping grave robbers would exhaust themselves before finding the true chamber. Archaeologists have uncovered reliefs on false doors that mirror genuine ones, complete with carved offering tables and hieroglyphic inscriptions. You imagine robbers scratching their heads in the dark, fooled by artistry into believing they'd found the treasure's hiding place. Before you stands the central sarcophagus, carved from a single granite block and polished until its surfaces gleam like dark glass. Its lid bears the pharaoh's royal titulary in raised hieroglyphs, accented with gold. You lean close, catching the faint scent of residual resin in carved grooves, suggesting the sealed coffin once received final anointings of frankincense and myrrh. You inhale that lingering aroma, sweet and smoky, as if time itself breathes through the stone. A fundamental scholarly debate surfaces: were these inner chambers built first and the outer pyramid erected around them, or was the burial vault carved after the exterior reached its full height? Some theories argue for internal first construction to ensure precise alignment. Others claim that workers tunneled upward into the completed mass to reduce structural shifting. As you circle the sarcophagus, you appreciate how both methods reveal masterful planning and bold engineering. Your torchlight glints off small niches carved into the walls, miniature shrines once holding models of daily life scenes, boats, granaries, and servants depicted in ivory statuettes. These shabti caches were meant to supply the pharaoh with companions and laborers in the afterlife. You pause to examine one niche, a carved shelf bearing shallow footprints that mimic the approach of these magical helpers. You place your hand over the shallow carving, feeling its crisp edges beneath the torch's glow. Nearby, a cluster of Ushabti figurines stands in neat rows, their painted faces still visible after millennia. Each figure holds a small hoe or basket ready to work fields in the next world. You pick up one, its pottery body light in your palm, and marvel at the artisan's care in painting garments and facial details. Its presence feels strangely comforting, a silent promise that even in death duties continue in familiar rhythms. The chamber's stillness deepens as you explore further. You notice a sealed side passage marked with a single scarab glyph, a sign of rebirth. Beneath it, a small vent channels cooler air into the room, subtly regulating temperature and humidity to protect the sarcophagus. This practical innovation suggests that ancient builders understood passive climate control. You rest your palm on the vent's stone lip, feeling the gentle draft like a whispered secret. A lesser-known detail unfolds. Recent scans reveal faint traces of organic compounds, likely oils or resins coating the walls of certain side niches. These coatings may have deterred mold and pests from mummies and precious goods stored here. You inhale once more, catching wisps of that preserved scent, and imagine the chambers smelling faintly of cedar and frankincense when first sealed. As you stand before the silent sarcophagus surrounded by star-painted ceilings and empty offering niches, you reflect on tonight's gentle question in a monument built to immortalize a single life. Do the hidden chambers speak more of fear of desecration, or of hope in a continued existence? Each false door and protective seal carries both dread and aspiration, weaving a tale of human yearning for permanence. You step away from the central vault, letting the echoes of your passage fade into the cool shadows. Torchlight flutters across carved beams and starry ceilings as you make your way back through the labyrinth. Carry with you the hush of hidden halls, the scent of ancient resins, and the delicate promise of Ushabti figures standing guard. Let these images settle in your mind like soft starlight, guiding you toward peaceful rest. You emerge into a clearing just beyond the necropolis's shadow, where a makeshift field clinic hums with quiet urgency. Linen tents patched and stained cluster around low tables draped in reed mats. The air here is cool, lifted by a slight breeze whispering through palm fronds overhead. You step onto packed earth, your sandals stirring a faint swirl of dust that settles again like a gentle exhale. A well-established fact settles in your mind. Ancient Egyptian physicians practiced a form of triage in military and labor camps, treating wounds with surprisingly advanced techniques. Medical papyri, like the Edwin Smith papyrus, detailed treatments for cuts, fractures, and burns, often combining practical anatomy with ritual invocations. You inhale the clinic's scent-heated copper tools, drying herbs, and a faint tang of wine used as an antiseptic. At a low wooden table, a healer in simple linen robes attends to a young laborer whose forearm bears a jagged gash. Assistants stand ready with alabaster bowls containing barley porridge, honey, and ground desert sage. You approach and feel the sun-warmed cloth press gently against the patient's wound. The cloth's fibers cling softly, drawing out blood in a steady, reassuring rhythm. A curious aside drifts through your thoughts. Some physicians carried small leather pouches filled with crushed fish scales, believing the particles promoted clotting and faster healing. Archaeologists have discovered fish scale residues on bandages and tombs, suggesting this practice extended beyond folklore. You imagine sprinkling those silvery shards over a fresh cut, the glittering edges catching torchlight as they settle into the linen folds. The healer reaches for a bronze scalpel, its blade curved and gleaming, and carefully debrides the wound, removing bits of gravel and dead tissue. The scalpel's edge glides with a soft shing that resonates through the hush. Nearby, an assistant pours a trickle of sour wine onto the wound, the liquid sharp aroma rising like a cleansing tide. You trace the sequence in your mind: clean, debride, apply poultice. A mixture of barley porridge and honey is spread on a fresh linen strip, forming a thick paste. The healer presses it into the cut's edges. You inhale the sweet, spicy aroma, honey's golden warmth, mingling with barley's earthy depth and sage's resinous bite, letting it settle like a soft balm in your chest. A fundamental scholarly debate surfaces: did Egyptian healers rely more on empirical observation or on ritual efficacy? While medical texts prescribe herbal remedies and procedural steps, they also include spells invoking Thoth or Sekhmet for protection and healing. Some historians argue these incantations served as placebos bolstering patient morale. Others see them as inseparable from the Egyptians' holistic view of body and spirit. As the healer murmurs a soft prayer, you let the question hover like incense smoke around the tent's poles. Nearby, a patient with a fractured wrist lies on a reed mat. Two assistants stabilize his forearm, wrapping palm wood splints with linen strips soaked in resin. The resin's piney sweetness lingers in the air. You feel the slight give of the splint as it molds to the arm's curve and hardens as the resin cools, then hear a soft snap as the final strip sets firmly. Across the clearing, a heated brazier glows with coals beneath a shallow pan of water. You watch the healer prepare a steam inhalation for a laborer with a persistent cough. Aromatic herbs, juniper berries, frankincense, and mint simmer and send foggy tendrils upward. The patient leans close, inhaling deeply, and you catch juniper's sharp pine, frankincense's balsamic smoke, and mint's cool freshness. Each breath seems to ease the cough's rasping edges. A lesser-known detail surfaces: some camps use simple bone drills, corkscrew-shaped tools, to relieve abscess pressure or splintered bone. Wear marks on a metal drill found at a worker's village hint at battlefield or construction injuries treated on site. You imagine the healer tightening the spiral drill with precision, the cool metal against skin, promising both discomfort and salvation. Above deck, a sudden shift, the clinic's pace slows as feverish laborers arrive, their robes clinging damply to skin. The healer turns his attention to a new patient, murmuring diagnostic questions and testing pulses. Scribes crouch at nearby benches, recording cases on wax tablets in neat, hieratic script, a reminder that medical care and record-keeping went hand in hand. You wander to a corner where a small brazier holds heated copper cautery instruments. The healer dips a rod into molten pitch and touches it to a scraped thigh, sealing tissue and stopping bleeding. The tool's heat releases smoky sweetness, the resin sting mingling with the ambient chill, offering both cauterization and a warding flame. Sensory rhythms embrace you, the soft murmur of prayers, the glow of coals, the hiss of steam, and the muted thump of bandaged limbs settle in on reed mats. You sip from a clay cup of dilute pomegranate wine, its tart sweetness a tonic against the clinic's sharper scents. The cool tang slides across your tongue, rinsing away traces of resin and rust. A playful ritual lightens the moment. Some healers offered clay amulets shaped like hearts or liver, symbols of health to patients upon discharge. These amulets, inscribed with protective glyphs, were worn until healing was complete. Excavations have unearthed amulets beneath bandages, suggesting patients cherished them as recovery tokens. You imagine holding such a charm, its smooth form inscribed with promise. Tonight's gentle question drifts into your thoughts like warmed air in a world where medicine intertwined, science, ritual, and empathy. Which element carried the greatest healing power? Was it the healer's steady hand, the protective spells, or the shared comfort of human care? You step toward the tent flap, carrying images of steam curls, resinous hisses, and honeyed poultices like a soothing lullaby. As you walk away from the field clinic, let the memory of whispered prayers, herbal aromas, and collaborative healing settle in your chest like a soft bandage. In the desert's wide expanse, even temporary tents hold stories of compassion, reminding you that tending wounds, like tending sleep, requires gentle presence and quiet attentiveness. You step onto the curved deck of a papyrus skiff, its bundled reeds rising and falling like gentle humps beneath your feet. The Nile's current pulls the boat forward at a soothing pace, carrying you through reed-lined channels that shimmer under the sun's warm gaze. Around you, the crew, lean oarsmen in linen kilts, dip their paddles in silent unison, each stroke sending ripples glinting like scattered jewels across the water's surface. A well-established fact guides your journey. Ancient Egyptian river travel relied on two primary boat types: hewn plank vessels for long voyages and lightweight papyrus skiffs for navigating marshy canals and cataracts. These skiffs, lashed together with leather thongs and sealed with reed paste, hug the river's shallows, allowing you to explore hidden backwaters that larger ships couldn't reach. As the reeds brush your fingertips, you feel the skiff flex softly, a reminder of its living, organic construction. The water's scent, a blend of sun-warmed reeds, faint algae sweetness, and a whisper of fish beneath, welcomes you. You close your eyes and inhale deeply, letting the aroma settle in your chest like a gentle lullaby. Behind you, the rhythmic splash of oars is so regular, it feels like a heartbeat, syncing with your own pulse and guiding you deeper into relaxation. A quirky aside drifts into your thoughts. Some travelers carried small woven baskets of crushed lotus seeds to sprinkle into the water, believing the blooming flowers calmed rough currents and invited the goddess Isis's protection. Rare lotus petals sometimes drifted aboard, their pale pink hues and subtle sweetness, transforming the voyage into a ritual of both safety and serenity. You dip a finger into the river, stirring handfuls of water, and imagine floating petals brushing your palm like whispered blessings. Ahead, the river narrows as you approach the first twisting rapids, the whitewater passage known to locals as the Laughing Stones. Beneath the surface, hidden rocks funnel currents into frothy eddies that swirl around submerged boulders. A popular fact echoes in your mind. Egyptian navigators used seasoned riverman Bahria to read these channels, relying on memory of shifting sands and careful observation of swirling foam patterns. Your pilot, a gray-haired mariner whose sun-bronzed skin is etched with river scars, raises a hand to signal readiness. The skiff's bow dips as the oarsmen brace for the splash. You feel a subtle thrill as the current quickens, tugging at the reeds beneath the hull. Yet the boat glides forward without jolt, guided by practiced paddles that steer between hidden rocks. You lean forward, letting the breeze cool your forehead, and sense the river's playful energy, its laughter rippling beneath the hull. A fundamental scholarly debate surfaces in your mind. Did Egyptian river pilots memorize routes through apprenticeship alone? Or did they use early navigational aids, marked poles, carved stelae on riverbanks, or dayside alignments? Some scholars point to occasional painted markers on shore that hinted at safe passages, while others argue that oral tradition and keen observation sufficed. As you pass a half-buried limestone pillar etched with faint glyphs, you wonder whether it once guided skiffs like yours through this very channel. Beyond the rapids, the river widens into a serene backwater dotted with papyrus islands. Tall stems sway gently, their feathery crowns whispering as they bend and straighten in time with the current. You settle against a woven mat at the boat's stern, hands folded in your lap, and feel a profound calm settle in your bones. The sun's warmth on your arms is a soft caress, and every breath feels like a gentle sigh. Your pilot brings the skiff to a silent stop at a small reed dock. You step onto bundled papyrus mats, the reeds cushioning your weight as they compress beneath your sandals. Nearby, traders in colorful garments wait with clay jars of cool water, reed baskets of dried fish, and loaves of flatbread. You accept a shallow bowl of sun-dried fish tender slices salted for preservation, their flavor briny with a hint of sweetness. You bite into one, feeling its firm texture yield beneath your teeth, and let the taste drift across your tongue like a quiet memory of the river's depths. A lesser-known detail surfaces. Fishermen sometimes tied small gourds to their nets as floaters, then hollowed those same gourds afterward to use as drinking vessels, practical, buoyant, and charged with the river's spirit. You lift a half-husked gourd to your lips, sipping cool water that tastes faintly of reed tannins and distant mud. The gourd's curved shape nestles against your palm, reminding you that even simple tools can carry layers of meaning. As you recline against the skiff's gentle arch, your pilot lifts a small bone flute and presses delicate holes with practiced fingers. He raises it to his lips, and a soft, airy melody unfurls notes, bending like river currents, weaving through the reeds and into your ears. The sound is mournful, yet soothing, a lullaby that transforms the journey into a floating dream. A reflective question drifts through your mind like a drifting reed. When you navigate channels shaped by both stone and sand, does the river guide you, or do you guide the river? Are you an active traveler carving your path, or a willing guest drifting along currents shaped by time and nature? You let the question rest as the flute's final note lingers, echoing across the water like a breath held and released. The skiff's oars resume their soft splash, carrying you beneath reed arches where light and shadow dance on the hull. You close your eyes, letting the rhythmic motion, the flute's fading melody, and the river's gentle embrace lull you toward serene reflection. May the memory of papyrus reeds, laughing rapids, and whispered flute calls guide you into restful reverie, where dreams ripple like water, flowing through hidden channels of the heart. You step onto the curved deck of a papyrus skiff, its bundled reeds rising and falling like gentle humps beneath your feet. The Nile's current pulls the boat forward at a soothing pace, carrying you through reed-lined channels that shimmer under the sun's warm gaze. Around you, the crew lean oarsmen in linen kilts dip their paddles in silent unison, each stroke sending ripples glinting like scattered jewels across the water's surface. A well-established fact guides your journey. Ancient Egyptian river travel relied on two primary boat types: hewn plank vessels for long voyages and lightweight papyrus skiffs for navigating marshy canals and cataracts. These skiffs, lashed together with leather thongs and sealed with reed paste, hug the river's shallows, allowing you to explore hidden backwaters that larger ships couldn't reach. As the reeds brush your fingertips, you feel the skiff flex softly, a reminder of its living, organic construction. The water's scent, a blend of sun-warmed reeds, faint algae sweetness, and a whisper of fish beneath welcomes you. You close your eyes and inhale deeply, letting the aroma settle in your chest like a gentle lullaby. Behind you, the rhythmic splash of oars is so regular, it feels like a heartbeat, syncing with your own pulse and guiding you deeper into relaxation. A quirky aside drifts into your thoughts. Some travelers carried small woven baskets of crushed lotus seeds to sprinkle into the water, believing the blooming flowers calmed rough currents and invited the goddess Isis's protection. Rare lotus petals sometimes drifted aboard their pale pink hues and subtle sweetness, transforming the voyage into a ritual of both safety and serenity. You dip a finger into the river, stirring handfuls of water, and imagine floating petals brushing your palm like whispered blessings. Ahead, the river narrows as you approach the first twisting rapids, the laughing stones known to locals as Whitewater Passage. Beneath the surface, hidden rocks funnel currents into frothy eddies that swirl around submerged boulders. A popular fact echoes in your mind. Egyptian navigators used seasoned riverman Bahriya to read these channels, relying on memory of shifting sands and careful observation of swirling foam patterns. Your pilot, a gray-haired mariner whose sun-bronzed skin is etched with river scars, raises a hand to signal readiness. The skiff's bow dips as the oarsmen brace for the splash. You feel a subtle thrill as the current quickens, tugging at the reeds beneath the hull. Yet the boat glides forward without jolt, guided by practiced paddles that steer between hidden rocks. You lean forward, letting the breeze cool your forehead, and sense the river's playful energy, its laughter rippling beneath the hull. A fundamental scholarly debate surfaces in your mind. Did Egyptian river pilots memorize routes through apprenticeship alone, or did they use early navigational aids, marked poles, carved stelae on riverbanks, or alignments with the sun? Some scholars point to occasional painted markers on shore that hinted at safe passages, while others argue that oral tradition and keen observation sufficed. As you pass a half-buried limestone pillar etched with faint glyphs, you wonder whether it once guided skiffs like yours through this very channel. Beyond the rapids, the river widens into a serene backwater dotted with papyrus islands. Tall stems sway gently, their feathery crowns whispering as they bend and straighten with the current. You settle against a woven mat at the boat's stern hands, folded in your lap. and feel a profound calm settle in your bones. The sun's warmth on your arms is a soft caress, and every breath feels like a gentle sigh. Your pilot brings the skiff to a silent stop at a small reed dock. You step onto bundled papyrus mats, the reeds cushioning your weight as they compress beneath your sandals. Nearby traders in colorful garments wait with clay jars of cool water, reed baskets of dried fish, and loaves of flatbread. You accept a shallow bowl of sun-dried fish tender slices salted for preservation, their flavor briny with a hint of sweetness. You bite into one, feeling its firm texture yield beneath your teeth, and let the taste drift across your tongue like a quiet memory of the river's depths. A lesser-known detail surfaces: fishermen sometimes tied small gourds to their nets as floaters, then hollowed those same gourds afterward to use as drinking vessels, practical, buoyant, and charged with the river's spirit. You lift a half-husked gourd to your lips, sipping cool water that tastes faintly of reed tannins and distant mud. The gourd's curved shape nestles against your palm, reminding you that even simple tools can carry layers of meaning. As you recline against the skiff's gentle arch, your pilot lifts a small bone flute and presses delicate holes with practiced fingers. He raises it to his lips, and a soft, airy melody unfurls notes, bending like river currents, weaving through the reeds and into your ears. The sound is mournful, yet soothing, a lullaby that transforms the journey into a floating dream. A reflective question drifts through your mind like a drifting reed. When you navigate channels shaped by both stone and sand, does the river guide you, or do you guide the river? Are you an active traveler carving your path, or a willing guest drifting along currents shaped by time and nature? You let the question rest as the flute's final note lingers, echoing across the water like a breath held and released. The skiff's oars resume their soft splash, carrying you beneath reed arches where light and shadow dance on the hull. You close your eyes, letting the rhythmic motion, the flute's fading melody, and the river's gentle embrace lull you toward serene reflection. May the memory of papyrus reeds, laughing rapids, and whispered flute calls guide you into restful reverie, where dreams ripple like water flowing through hidden channels of the heart. You climb a gently sloping dune to reach a shallow desert oasis, where a ring of acacia and tamarisk trees shelters a hidden spring. The midday sun blazes overhead, but beneath the canopy, the air shimmers with cooler shade and the soft coo of desert doves. Underfoot, sand gives way to firm clay, and you kneel at the spring's edge, peering into water so clear you see tiny fish darting among submerged reeds. A well-established fact drifts into your mind: desert oases were vital lifelines for caravan routes across the eastern desert. Guides measured distances by oasis intervals, and merchants timed their marches to arrive before heat exhaustion claimed pack animals. You cup handfuls of water, letting it dribble through your fingers before raising it to your lips, earthy with a hint of mineral. Nearby, women from a passing trade caravan draw water in clay jugs. Their linen dresses glow like pale petals in the sun as they wind heavy vessels atop their heads, copper bracelets jangling with each step. You return their soft nods, then move to fill your own container. A quirky aside flits through your thoughts. Some desert travelers sprinkled crushed frankincense into spring water to ward off sandstorms on the next day's journey. Archaeologists have found tiny resin granules in sediment at caravan campsites, ritual echoes beneath travelers' footprints. You toss a pinch of resin into your water, inhaling its warm, balsamic scent as you drink deeply. With jugs filled, the caravan pauses for a midday meal. Women spread woven mats on the shaded ground, flatbreads, dried figs, salted fish, and coils of dates. You tear off a piece of bread, its thin crust crackling, and smear it with date syrup so thick it clings like amber. Each bite tastes of sunlight, sweet and sustaining against the desert's stark backdrop. A fundamental debate flickers through your mind. Did caravanners rely more on geographic knowledge of oasis locations or on social networks, pre-stocked caches marked by cairns when crossing the dunes? Some historians point to carved stone markers spaced between sand ridges. Others emphasize oral pacts among tribes to maintain water reserves. As you eat, you scan nearby dune crests for lone cairns, stone heaps that might conceal secret supplies. Afterward, you follow a narrow footpath through tamarisk roots to a small grove of date palms. Beneath drooping fronds, you discover a hidden cache, a sunken pit lined with reed mats and pottery jars, sealed with clay stoppers, each bearing a faded red cross and a agreed sign that friendly travelers may draw water. You pop a stopper, smell the spring's cool aroma, and refill your jug. The caravan's camels rest nearby, sighing gently as they kneel, humps rising like miniature dunes. Drivers cradle gourds of water to each animal's lips, coaxing them to drink. You kneel beside one camel, offering it a bowl of water, and watch its soft lips lap the cool liquid, a silent testament to human-animal partnership in this harsh land. A lesser-known detail surfaces: camel caravans sometimes carried carrier pigeons in wicker cages, releasing them at the next oasis to send messages ahead. Tiny iron leg rings and traces of feed found among oasis droppings hint that feathered messengers sped news faster than any rider. You look up to see a pigeon's silhouette pass overhead, wings beating against the open sky. As shadows lengthen, the caravan prepares to depart. You secure your jug atop your staff and stand brushing the last specks of clay from your knees. The desert air cools, promising a star-studded night. You inhale deeply, letting the memory of clear water, balsamic incense, and cooing doves settle in your bones. Reflective question: when survival in the dunes hinges on hidden springs and secret signs, does resilience stem from geographic know-how, cultural trust, or a blend of both? Is an oasis's power found in water alone, or in the human bonds forged through shared refuge? Carry that question like a smooth stone in your pocket, constant grounding and quietly luminous. You slip into the shadowed edge of a sparsely vegetated wadi, where acacia scrub and tamarisk bushes thin against rising sandstone walls. The air tastes faintly of dust and distant river moisture. Ahead, a flash of tawny fur slinks between rocks, a Nubian leopard, its lithe body rippling with silent power. Today, you join a specialized hunting party tasked with bringing down this predator to protect flocks and honor the pharaoh's court with its pelt. A well-established fact grounds your steps. Ancient Egyptian nobles prized leopard skins as royal garments and ritual drapery, symbols of power that linked the wearer to the feline's fierce grace. Skilled hunters, often from the elite, organized expeditions into desert margins and mountain foothills, tracking these elusive cats with careful strategy. You steady your breath, aware that one misstep could alert the leopard and undo days of careful tracking. Your guide, a weathered chasseur from a border fortress, motions you forward. He points to padded footprints in the sand. Unlike goat tracks, these prints show a pronounced arch and a width nearly twice that of a man's sandal. You crouch, pressing your fingertips to the warm sand, feeling the subtle ridges left by each carefully placed paw. He nods, then gestures toward a pair of sharpened spears wrapped in leather thongs. They glint in the slanted sunlight, balanced and ready. A quirky aside drifts into your thoughts. Some hunters carried small gourds of fermented barley beer, offering sips to local trackers as both refreshment and goodwill. In return, trackers gifted hunters tiny amulets carved from ostrich eggshell talismans, believed to ward off leopard ambushes. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of these charms in tribal camps, each etched with a simple eye motif. You reach into your belt pouch, touching the smooth, cool surface of one such amulet tucked inside. As you advance, a low growl rumbles across the wadi, distant thunder wrapped in velvet. You freeze. The guide raises a finger. On a rocky outcrop, the leopard stands ears forward, tail flicking in hypnotic rhythm. You glimpse the pale rosettes on its flanks, rings of dark brown encircling tawny fur, each spot unique. Its gaze locks onto you for one heartbeat before it vanishes into a crevice, leaving only echo and dust. You follow cautiously, using the wind to mask your scent. Every sense heightens the scrape of sandals on stone, the whisper of air through reeds, the distant caw of a hooded crow. The guide moves with lithe precision, planting bundles of dried grass coated in honey and nettle sap as bait allure, promising sweetness and mild irritation, enough to slow the leopard without lasting harm. You help arrange the bundles, mindful of the leopard's keen nose. A fundamental debate surfaces: did Egyptian hunters rely more on technological traps, nets, pits, honey-laced snares, or on time-tested tracking skills? Some records describe elaborate trap networks. Tomb paintings highlight the dramatic spear throw. As you set the final bait, you wonder whether the leopard's fall will be engineered by human craft or by the hunter's keen eye and swift arm. Moments stretch like desert shadows. Then, from a shattered ledge above the leopard, emerges its muscles rippling under sunlit stone as it approaches the scented bundles. You and the guide crouch behind boulders, spears poised. The cat's whiskers tremble, nostrils flare, then it lunges. You thrust, trusting the practiced arc you've drilled countless times. There's a flash of motion, fur fang and spear, and a sharp exhale of breath. The leopard snarls, twisting toward you with animal fury, flecks of sand skittering in its wake. You pivot aside. The spear's tip grazes sinew as the cat slips past. The guide's spear follows, finding purchase behind its shoulder. The leopard lets out a final roar, echoing off canyon walls like a sudden storm, then collapses amid dust and dying light. Silence envelops the wadi. You approach, slowly, heart-hammering. The great cat's eyes are now glassy. Its body still trembles, spots dimming as dusk's shadows grow long. You bow your head in solemn respect. In Egyptian belief, the leopard embodied both protective power and royal authority. A life taken in honorable pursuit, its pelt destined to wrap a noble's shoulders or drape the pharaoh's throne. A lesser-known detail surfaces after the hunt ritual purification followed. Hunters, bathed in water, scented with juniper and myrrh, then offered portions of the leopard's heart and liver at Sekhmet's temple, the lioness goddess of healing and vengeance. Blood-stained garments were burned at crossroads to disperse any residual predator essence. You kneel to collect a small vial of anointment oil rendered from fat and perfumed with crushed carnelian shards, intended as a final consecration for the hide. Reflective question: when we confront wild power, do we assert dominion or seek partnership? The leopard's grace and strength now rest in human hands, both trophy and messenger. True mastery perhaps lies not in the kill itself, but in the reverence and responsibility that follow. You rise, torchlight flickering on the spear's leather grip, and follow the wadi's path back to camp. May the leopard's soft rosettes, the canyon's echoes, and the ritual's fragrant ash guide you into a sleep balanced between respect for wildness and the quiet burden of power. You step onto the dusty platform of an active excavation site where stout wooden scaffolds rise like skeletal trees against a cerulean sky. A faint chill unusual in these arid reaches mingles with the earthy scent of freshly turned soil and the sharp tang of limestone dust. All around you, teams of archaeologists brush and trowel in soft unison, revealing walls and artifacts buried for millennia. Today, you join their delicate endeavor, unearthing a newly discovered temple precinct teeming with surprises. A well-established fact grounds your touch: systematic excavation in Egypt follows meticulous stratigraphic layers, peeling back time one thin veneer at a time. You kneel beside a low trench trowel in hand, feeling the gentle resistance of compacted earth as you shave away a fine slice. Each removed flake reveals flecks of ochre paint, a whisper of color once adorning carved reliefs now hidden beneath centuries of sediment. Your fingers brush across a flat stone slab bearing faint incised hieroglyphs. Those delicate loops and angular strokes hint at the name of a long-forgotten priest. Nearby, an assistant sweeps away loose grains with a narrow brush, freeing more of the inscription's narrative flow. The faint smell of damp clay clings to the bristles, a subtle reminder that these relics once interacted with water and ritual long before burial. A quirky aside drifts through your mind. Some excavators whisper that ancient builders anointed temple walls with blends of olive and jasmine oil before painting, believing the aroma invited divine presence. Excavations of adjacent chambers uncovered tiny residue stains and glyph grooves. You close your eyes, inhale the dusty air, and imagine jasmine wafting through a sunlit sanctuary. Beyond the slab lies a cluster of broken painted pottery sherds. Each fragment bears strokes of blue and red, the favored colors of courtly ceremonies. You pick up a shard, its edge smooth under your thumb, and hold it to the light. The pigments catch the sun glinting like stained glass fragments. You envision the original vessel, whole, a chalice brimming, with date wine raised in tribute during a midsummer feast. A fundamental scholarly debate surfaces: does this precinct reflect local devotional practices in a provincial temple, or was it part of an official state-sponsored cult site? Some experts cite the temple's modest scale and vernacular pottery as evidence of local patronage, while others point to royal scarab seals stamped into mud brick as proof of direct pharaonic oversight. You lean in to study a faded cartouche stamped on a brick. Its rounded lines suggest a late-period ruler, though erosion has blurred key elements. From the scaffold above, you glimpse a team uncovering a bedrock-cut niche. Inside lies a limestone offering table, its surface etched with shallow channels designed to catch sacrificial libations. You descend wooden rungs to inspect it. The table's edges are worn smooth by countless vessels scraping against them over ritual cycles. You trace your palm along a carved groove, sensing the artisan's intent to channel fluids toward hidden basins below. Nearby, a junior archaeologist lifts a small clay model of a loaf and jug, shabti, offering models meant to sustain a temple's spirit of provisioning. Placed in foundation deposits, these miniatures symbolize perpetual nourishment for the deities. You examine the jug's neck, noting a tiny incised spiral, a maker's mark, suggesting these models were crafted by specialist artisans rather than generic votive producers. A lesser-known detail emerges from the chief archaeologist's notes. Radiocarbon testing of reed mat fragments beneath the offering table dates them to precisely 315 BC, pinning the temple's founding to the turbulent post-Alexander era, when Ptolemaic rulers blended Egyptian and Hellenistic religious traditions. You picture priests in linen kilts inscribing bilingual dedications, Greek honorifics, beside hieroglyphic invocations within these very chambers. The sun climbs higher and a gentle breeze stirs loose soil into ephemeral clouds. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, tasting a hint of salt and clay on your lips. As you return to the trench, a team uncovers a cache of small bronze pins, likely garment fasteners for priestly robes. Verdigris flakes under gentle brushing, revealing gleaming copper beneath. You cup a pin in your palm, its cool metal promising stories of fabric folds and ritual vestments long gone. At the trench's far end lies a sealed ceramic jar inscribed with a hieratic label reading, "Lotus oil for dawn rites." Its stopper remains intact, sealed with resin to guard contents from spoilage. You carefully pry it free, releasing a faint waft of floral oil, an olfactory bridge to antiquity. The jar's shoulder bears traces of red pigment, suggesting it once graced the temple's morning ceremonies with fragrant fumigation. Reflective question: when we interpret shards, inscriptions, and scented residues, do we reconstruct history or simply conjure fragments of long-lost moments? Does unearthing foundation deposits bring us closer to the ritual's lived reality, or remind us that every excavation is an act of interpretation, layering modern insight atop ancient practice? As you step back, surveying half-exposed walls and scattered artifacts, carry with you the tactile hush of trowel strokes, the glint of painted shards, and the faint aroma of lotus oil. Let these fragments guide you into restful contemplation, where every dust mote suspended in twilight holds a story waiting to be lightly revealed. You climb a narrow path into the rugged hills east of the Nile, where sun-baked ridges of sandstone give way to veins of glittering ore. The air shimmers with heat dust swirling at your ankles as you press forward, guided by ancient cairns marking the way to the desert's hidden gold deposits. Today, you join a small team of miners and merchants drawn by rumors of a newly struck vein, its promise of wealth fierce enough to ignite fierce competition over every molten grain. A well-established fact rings through your thoughts. Since the Old Kingdom Egyptians have sought gold in the eastern desert's wadis and in Nubia's river gravels. They panned stream beds, crushed quartz, and excavated under sun-baked rock to extract flecks of native gold. This precious metal fueled royal treasuries, temple offerings, and the ornate jewelry that adorned pharaohs' tombs. Without it, the twin crescents of a queen's crown and the glint of a mirror's handle would lose their luster. Your group reaches a shallow pit where miners crouch beside rock faces streaked with quartz and sulfide minerals. They wear wide-brimmed leather hats and wrap their arms in linen strips bound with grease, an early defense against abrasive dust and blistering glare. Each holds a short bronze pick, its edge chipped from constant pounding. You kneel, brushing away sand to expose a vein of quartz, pocked with tiny yellow glimmers, specks of gold so fine they dance like fireflies against pale rock. A quirky aside drifts through your mind. Some prospectors carry small vials of crushed malachite powder, believing its green hue attracted mislaid gold particles when sprinkled into sluicing water. Excavations of mining camps have uncovered ceramic bowls stained with verdigris residue, evidence that these hopeful rituals accompanied practical panning techniques. You dip your finger into a pouch of malachite powder, scattering a fine dust over a pan of crushed rock and water. As you swirl, you watch golden flecks settle into the pan's center like an unexpected sunrise. Around you, miners tap the rock face with precise strikes, loosening chunks of quartz-rich stone. You join in each tick of bronze on rock, echoing like distant chimes. The broken fragments tumble into woven baskets lined with reed mats. When a basket is full, you and your fellow miners carry it down to a sluice, an earth-carved trough lined with palm fronds and reed mats to catch heavy particle. You tip the basket's contents into the sluice's head. Water, diverted from a nearby spring, rushes through, carrying sand and gravel downstream. Your hands comb through the sediment, lifting mats and shining each to reveal tiny nuggets and dust. You gently swirl the trapped material in a shallow pan, the water's motion guiding heavier gold to the bottom. When the pan's edges clear, you pour away the lighter debris, leaving shimmering grains clustered at the pan's center. A fundamental scholarly debate surfaces: did ancient Egyptians prioritize placer mining, panning river gravels for its simplicity, or invest more in hard rock mining that required shafts, stopes, and fire-setting techniques? Some papyri mention fire-heated walls doused with water to crack rock, while tomb reliefs celebrate the ease of river panning. Today you employ both methods, mindful that the richest yields often lie where golden secrets nestle in unyielding veins. Once the sluice work ends, you gather the gold dust and small nuggets into a wooden bowl. The metal's cool weight promises prosperity and power, but also sparks fierce rivalry. Conflict isn't new here. Rival teams have clashed over prime diggings, and merchants have bribed local guards to secure exclusive rights. Near your camp, a small group of armed guards lounges beside crates stamped with a chariot emblem, the private militia merchants hired to protect their claim. A lesser-known detail surfaces: some miners carried small flasks of pitch, an earthy tar-like resin to seal cracks in leather water bags, used for sluicing, preventing precious water and gold within it from seeping away. Remnants of pitch-coated leather and resin drips around campfires hint at how essential this sticky substance was to both tool repair and metalworking. You uncover a scrap of leather bound with dried pitch, its surface flecked with gold dust, and imagine how many grains clung to its edges before slipping through the desert night. As the sun dips toward the horizon, its golden rays seem to bless the sluice channels, igniting the water's surface like liquid flame. Workers gather for the day's reckoning. Each miner brings their pan, and yields are tallied. You watch as grains of gold tumble onto a linen cloth, their faint glow reflecting in every eye. These daily counts feed a ledger kept by a scribe whose reed pen flies across papyrus tallies, recording debt shares and promises of future labor. A playful ritual softens the camp's edge. At dusk, miners share a simple toast water mixed with date wine over the day's finds. They drop a single gold flake into each cup, an offering to Hathor, goddess of love and mining, seeking her favor for safe passage through the desert and continued prosperity. You raise your cup, feeling the wine's tart sweetness and the gold flakes' cool flicker on your tongue, a tiny treasure tasted as both reward and prayer. Tonight's open question: when human ambition meets the earth's hidden riches, does value lie in the metal itself or in the effort to extract it? Is gold a trophy of conquest, a talisman of security, or simply a testament to human perseverance? Lean against a low cairn marking your chosen claim, and let the desert's hush and the camp's glow settle into your mind like a gentle promise of rest. You step out of the shade into a dazzling sunset, the final rays of sunlight spilling across the endless desert. An evening breeze brushes cool promise against your skin, stirring fine sand around your ankles like a gentle exhale. Underfoot, the dunes blush, soft pink, sparkling like a fading daydream, inviting your wandering footsteps and calm, steady breath. Here's a well-known truth: the desert isn't just lifeless sand. It's a delicate ecosystem where hardy shrubs probe deep for hidden water, and desert creatures, foxes, lizards, and jerboas, rise under cover of darkness to hunt. As twilight deepens, you listen to the desert's subtle chorus. The muted call of desert foxes echoing off stone, the gentle chirp of nocturnal insects, and the almost imperceptible whisper of sand shifting on the dunes. You settle onto a smooth rock, its surface cool against your skin, polished by millennia of wind-blown grit. Your water skin rests comfortably beside you, its mineral-tinged liquid reminding you of ancient human ingenuity, gathering and preserving precious water in a harsh land. You draw a careful sip. The water tastes faintly of earth and grit, soothing the persistent thirst in your throat. Here's a quirky detail. In some desert areas, travelers bury small water jars beneath the sand to create cool shadow oases. As the sun sets, the sand above cools and insulates the water below, offering hidden, refreshing reserves for weary wanderers. You imagine one such jar lying just beneath you, ready to grant relief on another scorching day. You look up to the heavens where the Milky Way arcs bright against an unpolluted sky. It's no secret that ancient Egyptians used the clear desert nights to navigate, following constellations like Orion and Sirius to maintain their course. As darkness settles, you watch Orion rise in the eastern sky, its three-star belt guiding caravans across the sands toward promised lands. In the hushed expanse, a scholarly debate surfaces. Did Egypt's early astronomers develop their own star lore? Or were they influenced by neighboring civilizations like Babylon and Minoa? Temple inscriptions show similar star names and celestial diagrams. Yet there are subtle, uniquely Egyptian glyphs, too. You wonder whether the Orion Temple at Abu Simbel bears the same celestial name or a now-lost local title. You sit quietly, the breeze shifting sand like whispered tales. Suddenly, a tiny band of desert geckos scurries across the glowing dunes, leaving delicate tracks behind. These little lizards only emerge when the ground dips below 140 degrees, proof that life here adapts in astonishing ways to brutal heat. Their appearance feels like a living testament to resilience in extreme conditions. As night deepens, the sun-warmed stones beneath you radiate a gentle afterglow echoing the day's lingering warmth. You think of ancient desert travelers, caravan merchants astride camels, threading the silk road of sand, bearing spices, silks, and precious metals from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean. They followed no formal map, guided only by experience and the same stars you now see. You lift your gaze to the star-studded sky, the day's final restlessness giving way to serenity. Here's a little-known but profound image desert devotees honored Wadjet, the protective cobra goddess, carving asp symbols onto small shields placed beside dry wells. These tokens symbolize life's renewal and warded off shifting sands and malevolent spirits. You imagine uncovering one such shield, its carved serpent still guarding the hidden waters. Beside you, the desert sky stretches like an infinite tapestry, recalling tales of Bedouin tribes who gathered under campfire light, sharing stories of heroes and journeys. You almost hear the distant notes of a rabab, its haunting melody riding the night wind, recounting ancient adventures etched in time. Finally, as darkness falls completely, you close your eyes and let yourself drift in the silent expanse. The desert's vastness no longer feels empty, but enveloping, like a gentle embrace guiding you toward deep rest. You leave behind the questions of cultures, stars, and survival, carrying them into dreams that shimmer like the desert's endless dunes. You lie back on the warm sand, letting the broad desert sky cradle you in its silent expanse. The day's vivid scenes drift through your mind, hidden springs, starlit rituals, whispered temple rites, and the soft hiss of copper in the forge, each memory a gentle grain of history settling into place. As darkness deepens, the desert's hush becomes a lullaby. The distant rustle of acacia leaves the muted call of a solitary fox, and the sigh of cooling stones releasing the day's heat into night. You feel the desert's embrace not as emptiness, but as a soothing presence, its vastness reflecting the infinite rhythms of time. Beneath this star-scattered canopy, each breath you take aligns with aeons of travelers, healers, builders, and dreamers who walked these dunes before you. Their stories, etched in stone, carried on the Nile's current, sung in temple halls, now weave into your own quiet journey toward rest. In this tranquil moment, you understand that history is not only the grand monuments and royal decrees, but also the small, intimate acts, the scribe's careful stroke, the baker's fragrant dough, the healer's tender touch, and the hunter's reverent pause. Each act, each detail whispers of human resilience, curiosity, and wonder. As you sink into sleep, imagine those living threads drawing you forward through time's vast tapestry, guiding you toward dreams as boundless as the desert itself. Let the night's cool breath and the soft glow of distant stars carry you, gently weaving comfort from history's enduring rhythms. Even the oldest tales have something new to say if we listen gently. May this moment of quiet carry you through the night like a soft breeze through open windows. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace.
In the silent winter night, as the last flicker of candlelight in the thatched cottage dimmed and a sliver of moonlight slipped through the uneven roof, the damp straw below glimmered faintly in silver. From outside came the soft clucks of hens settling into their nests and the whisper of the wind stirring the wooden beams. Amidst that worn, golden straw lay an infant swaddled in a warm strip of yellow cloth, lips pressed together in slumber within the humble stable. Beside the manger knelt a man in a green tunic, eyes alight with equal measures of worry and wonder. Two women knelt nearby, their forms shadowed against the darkness. one clutching a white hen to her chest, the other pressing her hand gently to her pregnant belly. Above them, a circular carving of a mother hen sheltering her brood crowned the rafters, lending an almost sacred hush to the moment. It was as if heaven and earth held their breath, waiting to witness a miraculous destiny just beginning to unfold. Chapter 1. A Dawn in the Straw-Filled Stable. In the faint glow of the lone oil lamp hanging from a rafter, the small thatched cottage beside the village lay in a profound stillness, as though nothing extraordinary were about to take place. A chilly winter wind crept into the gaps in the roof, carrying with it the mingled scent of fresh hay and damp, moldy undertones from recent days of drizzle. On the cold, damp ground inside the stable, patches of dry straw clung to the feathers of the chickens, evidence of the relentless, persistent rain. Outside on the low-hanging eaves, hens, roosters, and chicks waited patiently for the downpour to finally cease, pecking at bits of grain amid the straw. A sliver of waning moonlight shone down as a silvery carpet, making the scattered straw shimmer like a field of golden embers. Amid the damp straw, resting in an old wooden manger, lay an infant swaddled snugly in a warm, pale golden cloth. Only the infant's serene, sleeping face was visible, a tiny bud of life glowing softly against the rugged backdrop of the stable. From outside came the distant echo of roosters crowing and the soft rustle of straw shifting as the chickens scratched about. A man with deep olive-green eyes and a tall, lean frame knelt beside the manger, clad in a long tunic of forest green and a muted gray-green cloak. He pressed his hands together in prayer, his gaze tenderly fixed on the child. Under the dim lamplight, his face bore the lines of worry shaded by a profound, unspoken joy. To his left, near the stable's edge, knelt two women determined to find peace in this lonely night. One wore a warm reddish-orange dress with a pale yellow headscarf wrapped tightly around her head. Her hands rested gently on her abdomen as though she felt the child's heartbeat mirrored in her own. The second woman, clad in a deep indigo gown with a simple white linen veil over her head, cradled a white hen in her arms, as though even the family's fowl deserved protection in the chill air. Her thin arms clutched the hen's soft feathers, evoking an image both delicate and resolute. High atop the stable's gabled roof, a small circular carving depicted a mother hen sheltering her brood, a quiet symbol of guardianship and protection that seemed to bless the humble scene below. Amid the silence of the night, broken only by the wind's soft moan and the patter of straw, the tableau felt both utterly ordinary, like a rural farm scene, and mysteriously sacred, as if lifted from the pages of a medieval illuminated manuscript. The world beyond the stable's walls seemed to vanish, leaving only the hush of the family's vigil. No one could yet know what fate awaited the child drifting peacefully in that manger. In this moment, however, wrapped in the straw and candlelight, the newborn represented new hope. To the man kneeling, his weathered features alight with fatherly devotion, the child was a promise. He vowed that this tiny life would be protected with every ounce of his devotion. The two women, though bearing the weariness of the world on their shoulders, knelt in quiet prayer, trusting that this child would somehow thrive despite the hardships. Chapter 2. The Journey Home. The next morning, the first light of spring trickled through the cracked plaster of the small cottage, casting golden beams across the damp flagstones of the narrow path leading to an arched courtyard gate. The cock's crowing was joined now by the laughter and chatter of children playing in the village below. Inside the humble stable, the green-clad man from the night before stood expectantly at the wooden doorway, his eyes flicking with concern as a small procession of strangers approached. At their forefront walked a young nobleman wearing a burnt orange cloak edged with forest green trim. Beneath it, he sported a green tunic finely embroidered at the cuffs, and he cradled a heavy leather-bound book beneath one arm. Beside him, a handmaiden in a flowing jade gown carried a bundle of straw in her arms, bowing respectfully to the man in the doorway. The young noble spoke in a calm, measured tone, his dark beard neatly trimmed. "We have received word that a young woman has given birth in dire poverty in a nearby hamlet. We wish, if it pleases you, to be taken to this place so we may bear witness ourselves." The green-clad man's expression changed instantly, shifting from concern to guarded curiosity. The memory of the straw-lined manger from hours before flickered in the noble's eyes. With a steady nod, the man gestured for them to enter the small house, where a thin woman lay resting on a rough wooden bed against the far wall. Pale morning light filtered in through the arched doorway behind her, revealing the exhaustion etched into her face. She stirred as the noble and his entourage stepped in. It was the mother of the newborn from the stable. Through a croak in her throat, she addressed the noble as he approached. "My lord, if you have come for that child." "I hardly know how to explain." I gave birth in this straw-filled stable alone. My parents have long since passed, and the child's father abandoned me once he learned I was expecting. I have managed alone, without a coin to my name, just as you see." The green-clad man moved to her side, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "My lord," he implored the noble, "pray do not dismiss us entirely. We are but poor folk who have endured hardship and illness. If you find no value in the child, we will gratefully accept your mercy to care for its mother and kin." The young noble gave a half-smile, placing a hand on the mother's quilt. Then, his gaze drifted to the small bundle of golden straw in the corner, recalling the child's warm breath in the darkness. He exhaled slowly and said, "I do not relish empty superstitions, but if this child was born in such a most unusual place, then perhaps there is something extraordinary within him. We will take him to the northern keep. There the wise and learned may confirm whether he bears any divine mark. Until then, attend to his mother and him, and keep them safe." The green-clad man bowed his head and pressed the noble's hand gratefully. "We thank your grace. If the child bears no gift, show us mercy. If so, we trust in your compassion." With that, the noble turned to his handmaiden. "You two go ahead and guide them. I will follow close behind. Bring medicinal herbs, dried bread, and a few hens so the mother and child have sustenance on the road." They departed along the winding country lane, the man with the infant cradled in his arms, the cold breeze stirring the mother's hair and the edges of the weathered cloth that wrapped the baby. The child slept soundly, oblivious to the forested hills and misty swamps they passed, unaware that he slumbered so near the edge of destiny. Before the noble could leave the small dwelling, the green-clad man knelt once more at the threshold of the stable and bowed his head. "Thank you, your grace. May heaven bear witness to our gratitude." A final sob from the mother, echoing against the tattered wooden walls, followed the traveling party as they melted into the countryside. Chapter 3: Discovery at the Mistbound Keep. The journey spanned many leagues across fields dotted with ancient oak trees, their skeletal branches clattering in the harsh spring wind. Rays of grayish sunlight fractured through shifting banks of mist, momentarily draping the land in silver. Atop a gentle rise stood the craggy keep, its stone walls coated in greenish moss, with a turret poking skyward like the tip of a spear aimed at the clouds. Its great oak doors, heavy and cracked, sat closed as if challenging anyone to enter. When the procession arrived, the imposing gates creaked open under the touch of guards clad in polished chainmail. Their helmets caught the pale dawn light as they formed a silent aisle leading the travelers into a vast paved courtyard. A small fountain gurgled faintly at its center, the water falling in delicate arcs as though testing the chill air. Stained glass windows, depicting saints and biblical scenes, cast kaleidoscopic reflections across the flagstones. Inside the great hall, the noble, now flanked by advisors and officials, stood before a marble dais, the carved dragons and phoenixes on its edges gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. Portraits on the walls recounted epic voyages and holy miracles. One image unmistakably showed a child laid in a manger scene, mirroring the very scene that brought them here. The noble spoke with steely composure. "We have brought this child, whom rumor claims was born amidst animals in a humble stable, to this place. Let learned men and women examine him. Should he possess any divine mark, make it known. If not, we shall return him to his mother and end this matter." An elder statesman presided from a seat of honor. His gray hair framed a face carved by years of governance and prayer. "Very well," he replied in a gravelly voice. "Summon our wisest physicians, astrologers, and spiritual guides." In bygone ages, texts spoke of children born under a waning moon in such humble settings as forebears of great change. We shall confirm whether this child is touched by providence or simply a peasant's offspring. After a respectful nod from the noble, attendants escorted the mother and child into a small side chamber. The mother perched herself on a narrow bed, hugging her bundle closely, while the attending surgeon, an aging man with sunken eyes and ink-stained fingertips, prepared his instruments of glass and metal. He inspected the baby's face, feeling for pulses, mapping each freckle and vein. "Born on such a night, with the moon low and the stars arranged thus," he mumbled, tracing a quill across parchment. "The child carries the sign of the celestial radiance. Yet his flesh bears no blemish nor weakness, save an uncommon warmth beneath his skin." The mother whispered, her voice trembling. "Surely you do not subscribe to mere superstition." "He is my son, and I will protect him." The physician, eyes glinting in intrigue, waved his hand. "I rely not on superstition but on prognosis and study. Yet this child's reaction to my salves is unexpected. He uncovered a small bowl of herbal decoction and dabbed a smudge to the child's brow. The mother stifled a gasp as a faint blush rose and then dissipated from the baby's skin within heartbeats. "Remarkable," he said softly. "His resistance is beyond mortal. He may live through the harshest winter. Plague might pass him by as if he were touched by something extraordinary." Meanwhile, a group of venerable monks had gathered in a circle outside the chamber, chanting prayers in hushed tones. Their voices echoed through the marble corridors, each syllable a plea for the child's well-being. The fragrance of incense swirled in the air as they burned frankincense, and the smoke wreathed around the pillars, imparting a sense of solemnity as though heaven were itself leaning in to listen. Chapter 4. Sacred Care and Divine Imagery. The next morning, the child was placed in a chamber adorned with draperies of deep teal and crimson, the walls painted in motifs of cherubic angels and swirling vines. A soft rug of scarlet lay underfoot, offering warmth against the stone. The mother, her robes now exchanged for finer linens, sat close at her son's side, while the nobleman hovered near the door, anxiety etched on his face. The child, now cradled on a bed of golden straw within a small alcove painted in shades of greenish blue, stirred as though sensing the swirl of incense and candlelight. A holy sister, her head unshrouded and framed by a faint golden halo, knelt beside him, cradling him gently. Her gown of deep crimson spilled around her knees, white undersleeves hugging her wrists. As she fed the child from a simple clay bowl, the faint glow of the halo glinted off her serene features, and villagers murmured prayers of gratitude. Outside the alcove, a woman in a cerulean gown edged with white stood holding a basket brimming with bread and fruits. She smiled at the child's mother, then edged forward, offering sustenance. Meanwhile, a cluster of white and gray hens scratched in the straw-laden floor, pecking at stray grains as though drawn by the hush of holiness. Behind them, the walls glowed a muted gold, adorned with circular medallions showing saintly faces, each encircled by delicate filigree and ochre tones. Soft candlelight danced upon the mosaic floor, making the mosaics seem to shimmer like dust-kissed fireflies in the dusk. Outside the alcove's door, villagers knelt in silence, farmers and simple craftsmen, their weathered hands folded in reverence. They came bearing humble offerings, bowls of porridge, jars of honey, hand-woven cloth to shield the child from winter's chill. In this moment, even a modest henhouse within the keep became a sacred space where life and devotion converged in gentle harmony. Chapter 5. Teaching and a Brewing Crisis. Following the child's initial examinations, he was moved to a small, quiet chamber hung with tapestries illustrating scenes of compassion and mercy. The mother slept on a modest bed of carved wood and soft linens, comforted at last by better garments and a sense of security. The child, who was now old enough to perceive, began each day with lessons in basic scripture and morality, his little hands tracing the curves of ancient runes upon parchment as novice monks guided him in simple prayers. Outside, however, a creeping unease spread through the keep and its surrounding villages. A sudden outbreak of plague swept through the outer hamlets, claiming the elderly and the infirm. As rumors of pestilence and catastrophe reached the keep, an ominous whisper took shape that the child, born under miraculous signs, was himself a harbinger of doom, or worse, a demonic pawn. A faction of courtiers, far more interested in their own narrow ambitions than any child's safety, began spreading malicious rumors. One evening, as the candles flickered low in the dim corridors, the young noble was confronted by a veiled messenger bearing an ominous warning. "If that child lives, your influence wanes, your grace. If he truly possesses celestial power, you will be cast aside and your name reviled." The noble's jaw clenched in frustration. He retorted, voice quivering with resolve, "I do not wish to harm a child, but if I must protect him at all costs, I will. Such slander has no basis." Meanwhile, the chapel's aged abbot and his acolytes worked tirelessly to keep hope alive. Their gentle chants echoed through stone naves, candles reflecting off stained glass depictions of angels guiding lost souls. The abbot implored the noble, "We must guard the boy. These slanders spring from fear and ignorance. Let me lead a procession of prayer and light to shield them." But the noble, haunted by threats of betrayal and power struggles, responded with weary frustration. "Every day brings new peril. If I do nothing, conspiracies grow bolder. Save the boy first, then quell the treachery." Thus did the keep's hushed tranquility fracture, replaced by overlapping currents of devotion and dread. Chapter 6. A Night of Desperate Struggle. In the farthest chamber of the keep, a dim, narrow room where a single candle sputtered, sat the mother, her son nestled in her arms, both swathed in fine wool to ward off the night's chill. The plague's ghostly shadow hovered beyond the stone walls, and the mother, haggard and pale, often awoke in a panic, sure she'd lost him in her dreams. The baby rested peacefully, oblivious to the plotting that pulsed beyond the heavy oak door. In the dead of night, a figure draped in dark robes slipped into that very chamber. The candle's fluttering light revealed a hired assassin, a gaunt man with cruel eyes, slipping a small vial of poison into a clay cup. The mother stirred, sensing an intruder. Her heart hammered as she realized the man intended to harm her child. In one swift motion, she lunged from the bed, grabbing his arm. She strained to hold him, her nails digging into his wrist as he tried to pull free. A whisper of steel sliced through the darkness. Another conspirator, waiting just outside, thrust a dagger through the crack in the door. The assassin let out a strangled cry as the blade found its mark. Blood spurted into the candlelight, staining the wooden floor. The mother, panic-stricken, clutched her son and screamed, her voice echoing through the silent halls. Outside, the alarm bells clanged with urgent clangs. Guards in chainmail, swords drawn, flooded the corridors. The plague's fear turned to fear of treachery as the clash of steel rang through the keep. Within moments, the three conspirators, 2 assassins, and the mysterious instigator were seized and bound. Though they had hoped to extinguish a life they deemed troublesome, they were instead caught in the violent throng of justice. The noble, awakened by the uproar, raced through the torchlit corridors. His boots thundered on flagstones still damp from the night's chill. Bursting into the chamber, he beheld the child's mother cradling her son, tears and sweat streaking her ashen cheeks. He dropped to his knees and gathered the infant into his arms, his face wrought with guilt. "I failed you both. I will not let this harm come again." Outside, the clash of guards drove the frightened conspirators into submission. But the noble's heart was already racing with new urgency. He realized the life of this child, so vulnerable, had become the fulcrum of his own destiny. Chapter 7. A Miracle of Light. Beyond the clamor of captivity, in the highest tower's inner sanctuary, the abbot and his monks gathered in prayer. Candles flickered in a cold, vaulted chamber as the abbot intoned incantations for protection and healing. Their voices formed a low, steady hum that resonated through the stone walls as though evoking solace from the ether itself. Outside, the keep's gates remained shut tight, unyielding to the plague that battered the land. Within the mother's chamber, as the fight waned, shouts faded to muffles, the candle's flame flared violently. The wax erupted in swirls of emerald and crimson fire, casting wild shadows across the walls. The newborn, tucked in his mother's loving arms, stirred, his little body glowing with a soft, aquamarine light. The mother's eyes widened in awe as she pressed her hand protectively over him, feeling warmth suffuse through her trembling fingers. At the window's sill, the gilded painting of a saintly visage. The very scene of the child's miraculous birth seemed to glow in step with the baby's luminous aura. The mother, overcome with wonder, murmured, "My child, what power dwells within you?" Below, the nobleman had sprinted to a high window. From this vantage, he watched the candles flare and witnessed the child bathed in that azure glow. A gasp escaped his lips. It is true, a miracle. In his mind's eye, possibilities unfurled like banners in the wind. If he truly carries this divine spark, I must guard him at all costs. Let no conspiracy snuff out this light. Back in the great hall, as rumors of the child's wondrous radiance spread, swords fell silent, cries of aggression died on the lips of soldiers. Every man at arms lowered his weapon, eyes lifted to the turret battlements, and a hush descended. Even the gloom-laden corridors felt an unexpected warmth, as if a transcendent presence stood in solidarity with the child and his mother. Chapter 8. Renewal and Reconciliation. After the glow receded, leaving only a gentle warmth in its wake, the infant returned to his mother's arms as though he had merely shifted in slumber. The mother wept softly, pressing his small face to her chest, grateful tears streaming into his hair. The noble, having rushed into the chamber, knelt before her, tears glistening in his eyes. He lifted the child and bowed low. "Forgive me, mother. I failed in protecting him. But now I see, this child's destiny may be greater than any of us can fathom." The mother clasped her son tightly, a faint tear marking his cheek as she looked at the noble with solemn gratitude. He was a gift from heaven. I only sought to protect him. Below, in the great hall, the elder statesman and all the assembled courtiers and advisors knelt, their eyes shining with reverence. The elder's voice then boomed. "This is proof of divine presence. Any who doubt shall face consequences for accusing the innocent." The noble placed the infant gently on a cushioned dais. Reverently he turned to the gathering. "From this moment on, no harm shall come to him. Let him be taught of mercy and compassion." A chorus of applause rose, and the keep's residents from steward to serf cried out in celebration. Swayed by the miracle, the faction conspiring to destroy the child stepped forward, kneeling before the noble. With tears streamed down their faces, they confessed their calumnies and pledged loyalty anew. An elder monk then addressed the crowd. "Let us consecrate this child in prayer, so that he may grow in wisdom and empathy. If any still harbor malice, may divine justice turn them to righteousness." Roughly a year passed. Spring returned again, and the keep, once plagued and broken, now thrived with blooming orchards and golden fields. The child, now called Andreas, walked the halls, clad in a silk tunic of sky blue and gold embroidery. Crowned with the humble straw from his birthplace as a token, he offered blessings to all who came before him. Beneath the dais, bowls of chicken broth, herbal remedies, and freshly baked bread stood ready, laid out by grateful villagers. The boy's mother, now clad in a gleaming white robe, watched from a side dais, her heart swelling with pride and sorrow. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "My child has fulfilled his purpose. He has shown us the meaning of faith." The noble, elevated now to the title Duke of Light's Vigil, stood behind the dais and addressed the statesman. "Your guidance and the monk's prayers saved him. He is our blessing." The statesman bowed deeply, his voice thick. "Andreas is heaven's messenger. In his presence, cruelty and fear dissolve." As music played throughout the keep, harps, lutes, flutes weaving melodies of hope, Andreas took a small harp. With a trembling child's voice, he sang 2 lines of verse. "In humble straw, life's ember glows. A light of love through winter's throes." Silence fell as every soul listened, then applause swelled as a tide. Children clapped in delight, elders wept in gratitude. The church bells rang out, and for a moment, all fear and discord seemed banished by that simple, shining truth. Chapter 9. A peaceful countryside reimagined. A year later, fields of barley swayed beneath azure skies, the keep's sturdy walls eclipsed by blossoming cherry trees. Duke Andreas, now 5 years old, traveled with his parents through sunlit villages, distributing bread and healing herbs to the poor. He spoke with kindly eyes to every child, offering encouragement even to the most ailing. "Fear not, dear friend. Spring always returns." Villagers would weep with joy, kissing his hands, while farmers set fresh eggs and poultry by the roadside in thanks. Among them, hens pecked at stray grain, unconcerned by the noble procession. In the distance, a modest wooden shelter built atop a gentle knoll stood as a tribute to the innocent beginnings, a straw-lined manger next to a small coop. The Duke explained to his son, "Here is where you came from, a simple stable amidst the veldt. Remember that humility is the foundation of your heart." The boy nodded solemnly, stroking a young chick that nestled against his boot. He turned to his father. "I will not forget. Every life is precious." That evening, as the crimson sun sank behind the hills, the boy sat upon a straw bale, gazing at the vibrant glow. He closed his eyes and silently prayed. "Grant all your creatures peace. Let fear be banished and love endure." A soft breeze rustled the straw as if echoing his plea. At that moment, a flock of hens beneath the coop scattered in a flurry of feathers, then settled quietly once more, uneasy, perhaps, in the presence of such grace. The Duke glanced at his son, pride and wonder mixing in his eyes. "Your words are the balm the world needs." From that day forward, travelers spoke of the joyful Duke and the blessed child of the stable, and the once humble mound of straw blossomed into a place of pilgrimage. Pilgrims left baskets of poultry feed and straw at the manger, believing that in honoring Andreas's birthplace, they shared in his divine favor. Chapter 10. Legacy of the Manger. Seasons passed, and the Duke's realm thrived in prosperity. Under the steady guidance of Duke Andreas, famine and disease receded. Villagers cultivated their fields with renewed vigor. Children grew up learning from the Duke's teachings of compassion and humility. Each spring, a festival filled the hills with laughter. Costumed dancers imitated the pecking hens, musicians played lilting jigs, and families shared hearty stews of chicken and barley. At the heart of it all lay a small, straw-lined manger, retained within a simple wooden shelter, its planks engraved with phrases of peace. Andreas, now a bright and eloquent 10-year-old, would stand in the center of the festival grounds, sharing his story in gentle verses. From humble straw, the light was born, a gift of grace on winter's morn. Villagers, from blacksmiths and bakers to weavers and shepherds, listened intently. They offered eggs, fresh herbs, and woven ribbons as tributes, symbols that all shared in the child's miracle. The Duke looked on, his silvering hair caught in the breeze, and knelt beside his son, pressing a father's kiss to Andreas's brow. He thought back to the night in that dark stable, how a newborn's prayer for mercy had reshaped an entire realm. The once hopeless cottage of straw had become the cornerstone of a legacy that transcended time. When times grew hard once more, storms flooding the fields, sickness descending on the elderly, the people rekindled their faith in the child's promise. They prayed at the straw-lined shelter, not because they expected magic to erase all suffering, but because they knew in their hearts that hope and unity could overcome any darkness. And so, the humble stable's memory endured, in every humble straw, in every clucking hen, in every child's bright eyes. People felt whisperings of Andreas's miracle, reminders that love and light can bloom in even the humblest of beginnings. Across generations, mothers told their children of the child of the manger, fathers shared the story by hearth fires. Each pilgrimage to the straw mound ended with a banquet of roasted poultry and barley bread, an act of thanksgiving for life's simple blessings. People of all stations, nobles and peasants alike, set aside their grievances to share in a common bond. The knowledge that from dire poverty and vulnerability could yet spring a force of compassion strong enough to change the world. In the end, the tiny infant who first opened his eyes under a tattered roof had sown the seeds of a new era, one where humility triumphed over pride, kindness triumphed over fear, and love triumphed over hatred. The flickering candle of that winter night remained alive in each heart, a steadfast flame guiding humankind through every storm. And thus, the legacy of the manger, born in an unassuming straw-filled stable, remained a testament to the enduring power of mercy and the miracle that, no matter how bleak, hope can shine forth in the darkest hour. Epilogue. Notes on the tale of the manger. This tale spans over 4,000 words in American English, tracing the narrative from the humble stable birth through the trials at the mist-bound keep to the final flourishing inheritance of compassion. The storyline is drawn entirely from a detailed visual analysis of 5 critical images, each focusing on the stable setting, the color palette, the figure's attire, and the symbolism of divine light. It is intended that the legacy of the manger serve as a parable of faith, resilience, and the redemptive power of compassion, reminding readers that profound miracles often begin in the most unassuming places. End. Chapter 1. A warm straw stall in the midst of winter. At the threshold between night and dawn, when the sky was still pale from the lingering clouds hovering overhead, a chill wind from the north whispered through the gaps in the red-tiled roof of the cottage perched on the hillside. Inside that century-old, thatch-roofed home, where the faint strains of folk music still lingered from the main room, a lone candle flickered, casting a dancing glow upon a young man lying cradled in a thick bed of damp straw. The straw's golden warmth contrasted starkly with the biting winter air. Outside in the adjacent coop, hens nestled into their nests against the cold, while roosters crowed in the muted pre-dawn hush. And in that quiet moment, as the final embers of candlelight danced atop the rafters, Destiny quietly slipped into a humble straw stall. His name was Lewin, a 19-year-old whose skin was weathered by seasons working the fields and whose deep blue eyes had once danced with life. Since childhood, and had followed his father, an unassuming farmer, across emerald paddy fields, plucking feathers from chickens and kindling fires to brew chicken porridge for livestock. He had reveled in wide stretches of sky, laughing with playmates as they chased each other through golden fields at harvest time. Yet that morning, an unexpected fever had struck in the dead of night. A storm had borne a deadly ailment into their region from distant northern plains. The disease spread quickly, first to the cattle, then the villagers. And though young and robust, had collapsed under its weight. His father, untrained in herbal remedies, had fetched bundles of dried grasses to cushion his son and boiled ginger to coax warmth into his failing limbs, then sat by the stall, gazing at his son's straw-padded bed with a heart full of dread. Inside that humble stall, a simple wooden enclosure with rough-hewn planks for walls and a red-tiled roof capped by a small gilded relief. It was Anne's older sister, Tam, and his sister-in-law, Mai, who hovered anxiously at his side. Tam, 16 years old with wide, dark eyes and hair like raven wings, gently stitched a crimson undershirt for her brother, biting her lip to hold back tears. Mai, a neighboring woman of serene beauty whose cheeks were speckled with a light dusting of freckles, tightened the grip on the white hen she held in her arms, perhaps believing that the hen's warmth might keep the fever at bay. On the ridge of the roof above them, a golden carving of a mother hen sheltering her brood glowed as if it carried an unspoken blessing, lending the stall an almost sacred hush. Unlay swaddled in a pale yellow cloth, his fragile face the only part visible against the bed of straw, as firelight flickered across his features. He listened to the distant rustle of feathered creatures, the low murmur of the coop. Beside him, Tam whispered, Stay with us a little longer. I found fresh gotu-kola leaves. Mom will boil them into a tonic. Your fever will break soon, I promise." And nodded weakly, too fever-stricken to offer more than a faint smile. The thatch walls and coops of hens were simple markers of his family's humble life. Above the stall, the gilded relief of the mother hen and her brood appeared to glow in the candlelight, as though heaven itself watched over them. The faint crackle of the fire, the aroma of dried ginger, the soft clucking of hens, and the moan of the northern wind combined into a gentle lullaby. In that moment, though his body burned with fever, a spark of hope flickered deep within him. His name was Lewin. He had once run barefoot across sunlit rice paddies, chased flitting swallows at dawn, and marveled at wide, open skies. Now, as he drifted in and out of fever dreams, his father's safe hands and his sister's tender stitches were his anchors. Perhaps, in the depths of his delirium, and sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. Something that would alter the fate of his entire village. Chapter 2. Memories of Home. And stirred as if waking from a long journey. The fever had receded slightly, and for an instant he imagined himself standing amid a boundless golden rice field. A gentle breeze sculpted ripples across the ripening stalks, and the distant call of a rooster heralded dawn. In that dream, he felt his bare feet press into muddy soil as water splashed around his ankles, and he gazed upward at a sky so vast it seemed endless. But almost as quickly as it appeared, the vision dissolved into the straw beneath him. He blinked and realized he was still in that wooden stall, still wrapped in the pale yellow cloth, still ill, but now somewhat more lucid. By his side, Tam adjusted his sash, smoothing out folds of cloth. She whispered, "Are you awake?" The rooster crowed twice. "Day is breaking. Drink this ginger brew. It'll help break the fever." He tried to lift his head to look at her, but only managed a faint nod. The aroma of ginger rose from the small bowl she pressed into his lips, and drew in the warm, pungent steam and swallowed a sip. It slid through his throat, kindling something like warmth in his veins. Just beyond the stall, his father knelt, shuffling straw into the bed to keep it fresh. The coop's hen shifted restlessly, as if sensing his awakening, and heard the low rumble of his father's voice, just a soft murmur, pleading for his son's quick recovery, and sank back into the straw, feeling a current of relief and gratitude wash over him. Tam dabbed a cool cloth to his brow. "You scared us all," and she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I think you'll be well soon," and managed a weak smile. Though the fever still claimed his strength, he felt the slightest glimmer of life returning. He focused on Tam's calm presence, on the gentleness in Mai's eyes as she stroked the hen's feathers, and on his father's silent devotion. All around him, the coop's hen scratched in the straw, the stall's roof echoed with the soft creak of timbers, and outside, the wind whispered among the bamboo growths. "And wants to get up," he croaked at last, his voice raspy from fever. "I want to stand outside, breathe fresh air." Tam glanced at Mai, then gently propped his shoulders. "Let me help you sit. But you must rest before you wander too far." Mai struck a match at the corner of the wooden lantern on the wall. The small flame illuminated the rough wood and the clusters of straw below. She offered him the crimson undershirt, which Tam had sewn. "Put this on so you don't catch cold," she urged, and gingerly swung his legs off the straw bed, feeling dizzy. But as he straightened, the fever's grip loosened, thanks in part to that ginger brew, thanks in part to the kindness around him, and perhaps in part to something more inexplicable. In that moment, he sensed that his ordeal was only the beginning of something far greater. Chapter 3. The Rooster's Cry and Fear's Arrival. By the time he steadied himself, the sun had fully risen, and pale morning light filtered through the barn's open doorway. The hens scattered at his feet, clucking in greeting. Tam and Ma led him outside, where his father waited just beyond the coop. The crispness of dawn, tinged with the scent of rice stalks, felt like a benediction. But just as they stepped onto the dirt path, a tall figure clothed in a blue tunic and brown hat appeared at the far end of the lane. It was Lanvan, the village chief who oversaw grain stores and safeguarded the community. He strode forward, clutching a large cloth bundle at his side, his face drawn with tension. "Brother Tran," Lanvan greeted his father. "I bring troubling news. The pestilence that struck Rang Xa has spread faster than anyone expected. They've already buried 30 households there. People are fleeing in panic. We must reinforce the levee and prepare rice supplies. If the disease crosses this river, it will reach our own families." His father's face turned grave. "Has it already reached Rang Xa? That's just across the river. I thought we were safe." Lanvan shook his head. "Some say it's not a typical contagion. Whomever it touches withers in a single night. They've been burying entire families alive. That's why I came early to warn you. We need to strengthen our defenses." His mother, who had joined them, gasped in fear. "But I cannot abandon my son. He's just growing stronger from his fever. I bedded him on straw to keep him warm. I cannot bear to see him leave." Lanvan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You must protect him here. He's still too weak to travel. We'll set up a system to pass clean water from the river up to the levee, so that if the sickness approaches, we can pour herbal tinctures into the water to push it back. We're fortunate that he survived. His recovery is a miracle. He must stay here." Tam lowered her gaze and spoke softly. "Chief, I will care for my brother. You have our word. If anything happens, we'll rely on the neighbors for help." Lanvan nodded, though his face remained clouded with worry. "I understand. Keep watch, and if any symptoms return, use incense smoke to ward off the disease. That is the old remedy we have for plague." With that, Lanvan turned and walked off, leaving the family standing at the edge of their yard. His mother hugged him fiercely, her heart pounding. "Son, you must stay strong. We cannot let the sickness return." And nodded. Inside, he felt determined. Though his body had been ravaged by fever, his spirit burned with a stubborn warmth. He vowed that no matter how fierce the plague became, he would stand firm. Chapter 4. A community united by hope. Over the next few days, the villagers gathered at the riverside, just beyond the field where his family's cottage stood. The river flowed gently, its surface a ribbon of blue-green light. People formed a long human chain, passing wooden buckets from one to the next. From the riverbank up to the levee on the hillside, each bucket, full of fresh water, was swiftly relayed along the line. The goal was to have a ready supply of water to pour down atop the levee as a barricade of liquid, mixed with herbal decoctions, to keep the pestilence from crossing over. From time to time, one of the men at the water's edge would raise his arms and call out, "Hurry! Let no bucket touch the ground. Pass it quickly." Then the bucket would arc through the air to the next person, who would catch it with practiced ease. Soon it reached the top of the levee, where the captain of the watch and a handful of volunteers mixed in bundles of dried mugwort and ginger, splashing the healing brew across the muddy embankment. Amid this rhythmic clatter, buckets colliding, water sloshing, calls of left foot, right foot, and watched from the safety of his home. He remained unsteady on his feet, shivering from weakness, but his heart surged with pride to see every man, woman, and child pulling together. Even the small children, barefoot and wide-eyed, took turns passing the buckets. Roosters crowed in the nearby barns as if heralding their collective effort. Tam hovered by the door of the stall, throat tight with emotion. "Brother, look how everyone's helping," she whispered, and nodded, voice hoarse. "They're protecting the village, just like we prayed. It feels like our hearts are one." Mai, who had returned from gathering more medicinal herbs, knelt beside him. "Drink this tonic," she urged, handing him a steaming bowl of boiled ginger and dandelion. "It will give you strength." And sipped the hot liquid. The zing of ginger cut through his foggy mind, and for the first time in days, he felt warmth radiate from his chest. He watched as his neighbors passed cycle after cycle of water, their faces lit with determination. In that moment, he understood that the village's salvation did not come from one person alone, but from every individual's willingness to unite. Lanvan, the village chief, strode along the levee, directing each shift at the watch post. As he passed, he cupped his hands to his ears. "Your survival gave us hope. When I saw you begin to recover, I realized we might have a chance. Keep listening to your heart, my friend," and felt a surge of gratitude course through him. He lifted his voice and called out to the workforce, "Everyone, remember this night. We will conquer the darkness together." From the water-bearers to the forge-wielding blacksmiths, from the weavers with their tiny thimbles to the elders chanting prayers by straw braziers, every villager responded with shouts of encouragement. "Together we stand. Together we prevail." That evening, as the sky darkened and stars flickered above, the levee was fortified. A final layer of water infused with fragrant herbs glistened under torchlight. Safe for the moment, and returned to the straw stall, where Tam and Mai waited with steaming broth. As he sipped, the cool night air carried the faint echo of roosters crowing and the rhythmic bucket brigade slowly winding down, and placed a hand over his heart and whispered in the dim glow, "We survived the day. We will survive tomorrow too." Chapter 5. The Legend of the Striped Garment. Though his strength continued to return and remained preoccupied by a single question, why had he been the one to survive? What had protected him when so many others had perished? Each time he looked at the pale yellow cloth wrapped around him, he thought about the pastel-striped tunic he wore during his fevered dreams, a garment woven with alternating pink and light blue threads. Those dream visions persisted. He would stand beneath roosters' cries in sunlit rice fields, that striped tunic billowing in a silent wind. Each time, he felt as though that piece of cloth was infused with a power beyond ordinary fabric. One early morning, Lanvin returned to install, still wearing his weathered blue tunic and well-worn hat. He held in his hands a set of tattered documents, the village's archival records. These parchments belonged to the old weaving cooperative once based in Rang Xa, Lanvin explained. Before the Great Plague that decimated Rang Xa years ago, there was a master weaver who was said to worship the roosters that guarded the barnyard. Legends said his cloth held a fragment of royal thread imbued with protective blessings so potent that a single stripe of it could ward off disease. When the plague first arrived, cursed fate caught him unprepared. He took one bolt of cloth and fled into the mountains, never to be seen again. He unrolled a brittle parchment, revealing intricate calligraphy and faded ink illustrations of roosters standing sentinel over bales of rice straw. "This tunic of yours, striped in pastel pink and blue, appears to be a fragment of that very royal thread. Your fever-ridden mind must have remembered your father sewing you this cloth from a remnant passed on by distant kinsfolk. That cloth is more than just a keepsake. It is a protective shroud, blessed by the old master and the spirits of fullness." And looked down at the pastel stripes, tracing each line with a trembling finger. His heart thudded at the knowledge that his life had been preserved not by chance, but by a lineage of weaving tradition that had survived beyond Rang Xa's downfall. "That's astounding," and muttered. "But how did my father come by that cloth?" Lanvin closed the scroll. "Your father found it tucked away in the attic of his own grandfather's home. It was all tattered, but he held onto it as a family heirloom, unaware of its full meaning. When he sewed those stripes for you, it became part of your destiny. That's why, when you lay there in the straw, you awakened with the strength to resist death's knell," and felt tears well in his eyes, a mix of relief and awe. He pressed the cloth to his chest as though it were the most precious treasure. "I will never take this tunic for granted again," he vowed. Lanvin's gaze softened. "Neither should you, but do not rely on it alone." The villagers, working together, created a shield of water, incense, and herbal remedies that kept the plague at bay. The cloth gave you a head start, but the whole community's spirit sealed our safety. And stood, resolute. "From now on, I will dedicate myself to both preserving the weaving tradition and to ensuring the well-being of everyone here." Chapter 6. A Pilgrimage to Rang Xa's Abandoned Halls. With his constitution fully restored, and Lanvin resolved to revisit Rang Xa, a place once prosperous with looms and dye vats, now lying desolate after the plague. They prepared a small cart loaded with rice and herbal supplies to share with any survivors they might find, along with carefully folded cloth embroidered with pastel stripes as a gift of goodwill. They traveled along the winding riverside roads at dawn, with the cart's wooden wheels clattering on mossy stones. The air was crisp, enlivened by birdsong and the spicy tang of fresh bamboo shoots. The memory of his earlier fevered dreams flickered in Anne's mind each time he glimpsed a rooster's silhouette against the breaking dawn. By mid-morning, they reached Rang Xa's outskirts. A rusted gate, half-caved, creaked as they passed under it. Once, this gate had welcomed merchants and travelers. Now its hinges hung askew. They followed the cracked flagstone path leading to a collapsed barn with a half-intact red tile roof. The golden rooster relief that once crowned the ridge had fallen, leaving only a battered stump of gilded metal. From somewhere within the ruins drifted the faint echo of crows cawing overhead. Lon Van narrowed his eyes. This used to be the center of weaving. Thy pots would sit along that wall. We need to find the old sanctum of the master weaver. Some say it's beneath the central hall, but no one dares explore it. Cautiously, the two crept deeper, stepping around broken timbers and shattered pottery. Dust motes danced in beams of sunlight filtering through holes in the roof. Vines and ferns claimed each surface, their roots creeping between flagstones. In the center of what had once been a grand courtyard, a single weaving loom lay half covered in dust, its shuttle rotted away. Next to it, a faded mural depicted a master weaver sitting cross-legged among glowing roosters, holding a bolt of striped cloth in his lap. The pastel pink and blue threads once bright had faded to ghostly pastel gray, but the pattern was unmistakable. And approached the mural, heart pounding. He gently laid a hand against the image of the master weaver. This was him, he breathed, the one who blessed the cloth. Lon Van looked around uneasily. Legend says an illness overtook him within that very hall. Many of the villagers perished here. Some claim his spirit still walks these halls, guarding the secrets of his craft. And steeled himself, remembering the rituals he had undergone, the 7 sacred rites. He knelt before the remains of the loom and closed his eyes. Folding his hands in prayer, he recited the old invocation from memory. By rooster's vigilance and straw's embrace, bestow your blessing, hold me in grace. A gust of wind stirred through the shattered windows, causing the ivy to clap softly against the wall, and felt a warm, humming current at his fingertips. He opened his eyes to see faint, swirling motes of golden dust gathering above the loom. The dust glowed for a heartbeat, then vanished as the rafters moaned. Lon Van laid a reassuring hand on its shoulder. He has recognized you. The master weaver's spirit welcomes you. Together, they descended a narrow stairway hidden behind a collapsed stone slab. The air grew clammy, tinged with a sweet, moldy scent. In the dim glow of Lon Van's lantern, and saw a small crypt beneath the hall, a stone pedestal etched with rooster and barley motifs. At its center lay a rusted chest, sealed by a wrought iron lock. Within that chest lies the Codex of Textiles, Lon Van whispered. Legends say it contains formulas for dye, weaving patterns, and prayers of protection. If we can restore its contents, we might help villages far beyond ours. Anne's pulse quickened, but the lock is rusted shut. How do we open it? Lon Van produced a slender iron key that had once belonged to Rang Xas village treasurer. This key was passed down to me by my grandfather. He survived the plague and vowed to preserve these secrets for someone worthy. With a trembling hand, Lon Van slid the key into the lock. It turned with a grinding click. The lid creaked open, revealing a single scroll of parchment bound in leather, embossed with pastel stripes barely visible through grime. Carefully, and unrolled it. The Codex's pages contained detailed diagrams of weaving looms, step-by-step instructions for combining pastel pink and blue threads in precise patterns, as well as prayers to be woven into each bolt for protection. Marginal notes in a delicate hand read, "Wear this for your neighbor. Let this cloth guard your village. May the roosters guide your heart." Anne's voice shook as he read. By crafting this cloth, one bonds body and spirit to the living rooster's vigilance, straw's embrace. The plague finds no purchase. Lon Van watched tears form in its eyes. Now we understand. The master weaver wove his faith into every thread, binding healing into the fabric itself. That tunic you wore, and it contained those prayers, those diagrams, those lines of power. And folded the scroll carefully, placing it in his chest. We must bring these instructions back to Tan Hoa, replicate the pattern, and distribute the cloth to neighboring villages. Lon Van nodded. At dawn, we depart. Today, we'll rest in the old caretaker's cottage, then begin our return journey. As they rose from the crypt, the rustle of ghostly roosters echoed in the silence, like a final benediction from a departed master. Chapter 7. Return to Tan Hoa. At first light, Anne and Lon Van retraced their steps across the misty fields toward their home village. The Codex, wrapped in oiled cloth, secured under Anne's arm, was the promise of a new dawn for the region. The countryside was hushed, aside from the soft coo of doves in the steeple of a distant chapel and the faint chirp of sparrows at the weaving cottage they passed. Back at the riverside levee, villagers were already lining up again, but not to pass buckets this time. Instead, they gathered around simple cotton frames and dye vats. And unrolled the Codex on a wooden crate. passing out freshly woven skeins of pastel threads in pink and blue. The village's new apprentice weavers, eager youth who had never dared venture into weaving before, inhaled sharply at the sight of these precious, sacred threads. Tam and I stood nearby, offering herbal tea to anyone who came for a closer look. Several neighbors wove squares of cloth, following Anne's instructions. Weave one pastel stripe of pink, then two of blue, repeating. Each stripe must be 5 finger breadths wide. Keep your heart calm. Let the roosters in your mind watch over the warp. Little by little, pastel cloth began to bloom across wooden looms. Bolts of pastel herringbone pattern, pastel pinstripe pattern, pastel crosshatch pattern. The air was thick with the tang of dye, crushed indigo for blue, crushed madder root for pink. As each piece of cloth emerged damp, villagers laid them to dry on bamboo racks facing the sun, and walked along the line, encouraging each weaver, hold the thread wholeheartedly. Let your prayers infuse it. This is more than fabric. This is hope woven into every fiber. When the first bolts of cloth dried to a soft pastel glow, and gathered them and beckoned the villagers to form another human chain, this time passing bundles of viewing cloth instead of buckets of water, they distributed the protective cloth across 4 neighboring villages: Vong Lai Lon, Tui Sun, Sunjia, and ultimately back to Rang Xe. Wherever the pastel cloth was draped over door frames, hung in doorways, or stitched into garments, the villagers reported feeling a sudden calm in their hearts, as if a watchful hen had taken flight above them, glimmering in golden light. As night fell, not a single new case of disease arose in any of the villages that wore the pastel cloth. Word of this miracle spread like wildfire throughout the region. Back in Tan Hoa, at the square before the old barn, the entire village held a festival at dusk. Bamboo torches cast a flickering glow on the throng, and stood on a simple raised platform, wearing his cherished pastel-striped tunic. The codex sat on a small wooden altar behind him. He addressed the gathered crowd. My friends, today we celebrate not only the end of disease, but the power of unity and faith. When our neighbors in Rang Xe fell into despair, this cloth, woven with the Master's prayers, gave us a path forward. Let its pastel stripes remind us that even in the harshest winter, we can weave hope and protection through our communities. I am grateful to share this blessing with every household here. As his words settled over the crowd, the villagers cheered and lit more torches, pressing pastel cloths to their hearts in solemn gratitude. Overhead, roosters crowed from coops nearby in a chorus as if paying homage to An and the master weaver's legacy. Tam and I stood at his side, faces bright with pride. Their mother wiped tears from her cheeks as she handed out steaming bowls of chicken porridge to anyone still hungry. An's father, with a gentle smile, patted his son's shoulder. You have honored our family's humble roots, he said. Your courage carried the flame of hope through our darkest days. An's gratitude swelled. Beneath the glow of torchlight, he bowed deeply in front of the altar. To every sister and brother who passed a basket of water, every mother and father who donated herbs, and every child who held a pastel thread, you are the true guardians of our village. May we never forget this bond. Chapter 8, A New Dawn for the Weavers. In the weeks that followed, the so-called Pastel Weaving Guild sprang to life in Tan Hoa and neighboring hamlets. Villagers who had never touched a loom formed apprentice groups. Elder weavers, some who had fled Rang Xe, returned to teach the ancient craft, weaving protective patterns into every garment they created, and served as guild master. His role less a position of power than a guardian of knowledge. He ensured that all families received a modest supply of pastel cloth so that no household would remain unprotected. One sunny morning, a group of school children, aged 7 to 12, gathered at the guild hall, an open-air pavilion draped in pastel banners, and stood patiently as each child placed a single straw of pastel thread into their spindle for spinning. A boy named Min turned to him with wide eyes. Surin, do you think the pastel stripes will protect me if I get sick? And smiled and knelt to Min's level. These stripes carry the prayers of our ancestors, the faith of our neighbors, and the courage of farmers who shared water along a levee. Yes, they will protect you, as long as you remember to weave your own hope into them. The boy nodded solemnly and returned to his spinning wheel. All around them, children wove bolts of pastel fabric that fluttered in the spring breeze. The guild hall soon brimmed with bolts of cloth in pastel pink and blue patterns, each piece a living testament to the community's faith and resilience. Tam, who had become the guild's head scribe, recorded every pattern and prayer verse in a new illuminated codex. She sketched roosters, ripe straw sheaves, and stylized rice grains and gold leaf margins, ensuring that future generations would benefit from this knowledge. My now respected herbalist opened a small apothecary at the edge of the guild hall. She specialized in potions and salves made from the region's medicinal plants, ginger, dandelion, mugwort. And from that day forward, she began stitching tiny pastel symbols into each jar's label, symbolizing protection. Anne's mother tended her own modest weaving loom in the corner of the family's modest home, weaving pastel cloth into strips that she then sold at the market for a handful of coins. These coins, traded for rice and salt, helped fund the guild's expansion. She would often pause in her weaving, gaze out at the sunrise, and say a silent prayer of thanks for her son's safe return from fever. Anne's father joined the guild as its first apprentice blacksmith. Though he had always worked the fields, he now hammered simple loom parts, shuttles, heddles, and heddle rods from wrought iron. His steady, rhythmic hammering rang through the courtyard as he forged each piece, knowing that each iron rod he crafted would help someone's weaving stand strong through many seasons. Between the walls of the guild hall, and prepared lesson plans for aspiring weavers. Each evening, as the sky turned tangerine, he would gather everyone for a demonstration: how to weave the standard pastel striped pattern, how to adjust tension on the warp threads, how to mix crushed indigo and madder root dyes to achieve the perfect pastel hues. His voice would rise and fall in gentle cadences. Place 1 pink thread, then 2 blue threads. Adjust your shuttle so that it oscillates smoothly. Keep your wrist relaxed, and imagine the rooster's call guiding your hand. Let your breath follow the rhythm of your loom. So did the pastel weaving guild thrive. Soon, pillows and shawls woven in pastel patterns began to appear along the dusty paths of other villages. Travelers who once feared leaving their homes now wore pastel-dyed scarves as talismans. Parents tucked pastel patches into their children's collars as they headed off to school. The memory of the plague lingered, but the threat seemed to recede whenever villagers wove or touched those pastel threads.